There are a surprisingly low amount of video game westerns. You've got The Oregon Trail, where you die of dysentery, Back to the Future 3, where Doc's time in the Old West has clearly left some serious psychological damage, and a few other forgettable games. The lack of westerns is due to one game series so good, the rest of gaming has decided it wasn't worth competing, the Red Dead franchise. Starting with Red Dead Revolver, released in 2004, it's an unremarkable game that was unsure of what it wanted to be as it introduced new mechanics each level that wouldn't be used again. Most people probably don't know this is where the Red Dead franchise started, as it lacks what makes the future entries so beloved, with linear missions rather than an open world and a more cliched story, where a father returns home after finding gold with a business partner and gives his young child a loaded gun. In a twist that will surprise no one, his business partner betrays him, killing both him and his wife, and the rest of the game is you playing as his son, Red Harlow, as he hunts down the business partner. That being said, it does have the foundation that the later games would build on, a third-person cover shooter, but does have the Deadeye and dueling features, horse riding, and jumping on and off a train. And before anyone says it, no, Uncle is not Red Harlow. Even Arthur Morgan himself says so.
I'll tell you one thing, Uncle is not Red Harlow. I mean, Red Harlow's a badass, and if that's what Red Harlow became, I think that's pretty depressing.
So yeah, a fine, if unimpressive game on its own, but it is notable as the first time Rockstar moved their gaze to the Western genre. 6 years later, Red Dead Redemption is released, a spiritual successor to Revolver, but not set in the same universe, so while it's not canon, the events and Red Harlow himself are treated as a myth.
Yeah, my brother, he's dead now, but he used to tell me stories about Red Harlow. Legendary bounty hunter bringing the savage outlaws of the frontier to justice.
This is what people think of when Red Dead is said. An open world with more interesting characters, and the compelling story of one of fiction's best cowboys, John Marston, hunting down the remaining members of the Van der Linde gang. We're immediately introduced to John's stupidity, as his plan to capture the first member, one Bill Williamson, is to rock up to his hideout and demand he surrender, which goes about as well as expected.
Well?
But what John lacks in intelligence, he makes up for in stubbornness as he hunts down Bill Williamson, Javier Escuela, and finally his former leader, Dutch Van der Linde, in exchange for his and his family's freedom from the government. In a year that had so many beloved games, Red Dead Redemption was able to stand out as one of the best, with fans demanding a sequel, and in late 2016, Rockstar Games announced we'd be returning to the Old West.
You gotta run and don't look back. This is over.
As more trailers were released, they showed this game would be a prequel to the first game, following the days of the Van der Linde gang, with a new protagonist, Mr. Arthur Morgan. Originally slated for an autumn release in 2017, it was quickly delayed to spring 2018 and delayed again to autumn of that same year. Finally, it was released and was met with the best case scenario for a game company, getting a slew of positive reviews, and is currently the highest rated game on IMDb, but more importantly in our capitalist society, money. The prequel doesn't change too much in terms of game mechanics, just deeply expanding them. Hunting, visiting towns, robbing, horse riding, all were expanded on to make the player feel as immersed as possible, as a main focus of the game was realism, to bring to life the Old West. So, in a game this big, where do we begin? From the start of the game, it wastes no time in telling you this is the fall of the Van der Linde gang. The opening text tells us that the days of the Wild West are nearly over, with law and order slowly taking over America. Being set 12 years before the events of the first game, it wastes no time in telling you the ending of this game, saying that the few remaining gangs are being hunted down and destroyed, with the destroyed being underlined. This inevitability of the gang's fall is then proven as the game opens with the gang being chased into the mountains, pushing through a blizzard with someone about to die. That's literally the opening line of the game.
Abigail says he's dying, Dutch.
Before you've had the chance to do anything in the game, you already wanted him being chased down. This opening shows there are no other endings for this group. Nothing you can do will change the fate of these characters. Like all good prequels, the story doesn't focus on what will happen, as we already know where the characters will end up. It instead focuses on why the characters became who they are when we first met them. The introduction for Red Dead Redemption 2 shows us that these are not the characters we met in Red Dead Redemption 1. When you meet Dutch in the first game, he's a madman who shoots an unarmed woman, basically just to upset John.
Have the girl, John.
Easy, Dutch.
She's a parting gift from me.
The Dutch we meet at the start of this game, however, is much more charismatic and likeable, but with hints that he's not as good a person as we're led to believe.
Dutch killed a girl in a bad way, but it was a bad situation.
The first mission of the game is you riding out into a blizzard with Dutch to try and find some of the gang that got lost in the snowstorm. It was always a bit strange to me that John, our heroic hero, would have followed this madman. And yeah, he does talk about Dutch changing and losing his mind, but Dutch is just straight up evil when we see him. There's no complexity to his character. Here though, we can see why people would follow Dutch, pulling the gang together with his speech, giving them hope and a plan, and finally heading out himself instead of sending one of his subordinates. Could you imagine this guy doing any of that? John as well is not the same man. In Red Dead 1, he's confident and quite funny.
Who the hell are you? Give me that. I'm your old friend Amnesia.
And most importantly, he's a family man. John at the start of this game, however, is much more unsure of himself and less capable, with his first appearance is us saving him from some wolves and having to carry him back to the camp. One of the criticisms I have for this game is that John isn't as sure of himself or funny by the end of the game as he is in the first one. He's also quite a shitty father, with him refusing to believe that Jack is his son for the first half of the game and not wanting anything to do with him.
The boy wanted to see you, John.
He's seen me now.
Which is the complete opposites of the John that hunts down the gang, as his whole motivation for doing that was to get his family back. The game hammers home this difference in characters between 1899 and 1911 in the mission where you go find John as you're accompanied by Javier Escuela, you know, one of the people you hunt down in the first game. The game doesn't rely on your knowledge of the first game, other than some references. The story works fine for people who've started with Red Dead 2. This is helped by the fact that the game has a change in protagonist. Instead of John, you play as Arthur Morgan, the other best cowboy in fiction. A problem with releasing a game 8 years after its predecessor is that there's a good chance people never played the first one, so by changing the player character, it puts the new and old players in the same position. After being lunch, John is out of action for the rest of Chapter 1 and half of Chapter 2. The game sort of ignores him for a while. Other than that scene of him being a bad father, I didn't see him for 9 hours of gameplay until you talk to him about setting up a train robbery. He's not involved in the attack on the O'Driscolls or a different train robbery. This time away from John lets the player get to know Arthur, instead of complaining that you're not playing as John as you follow him around.
Because it's about time you did something to goddamn help around here.
Other than Dutch, John and Arthur, this chapter introduces us to the other important characters of this story. You have the characters you'll love, Hosea, a sort of co-leader for the gang, Sadie, who you rescue from the O'Driscolls, and Charles, a tank of a man who makes you feel safe when he's on a mission with you. You also get a character I promise you will hate with every fibre of your being by the end of the game, Micah Bell. It's well known that the opening of this game is very slow. It took me a bit over 2 hours to complete the opening, and in terms of gameplay mechanics, it's very inefficient. You have the first mission that introduces horse riding, gunfights and moral choices. The second mission has horse riding and gunfights, but this time against animals. Oh, and parkour. A third mission that has gunfights and an introduction to the BDSM mechanics. The fourth mission does change it up as you go hunting, and the final mission where you're introduced to the rope mechanics. And gunfighting, but on a train this time, and the chapter ends with a ride down the mountains. In terms of gameplay, yeah, the tutorial isn't very efficient and could be cut down to 3 missions, condensing the introduction into an hour or so, halving the time it takes for players to get to the full game. 2 hours is quite a while for an open world game to restrict players to a small section of the map before it opens up and lets you explore the world. The game forces you to stay at the camp, as trying to leave will give you a warning about the conditions being too harsh, and then your horse's stats will quickly drain, with it dying. And if you continue to press on, Arthur will shortly follow it. But what this tutorial is really introducing to the player is the story and characters. Its main focus is drawing you into the narrative. In this 2 hours, you're introduced to a new protagonist, new characters, and reintroducing known characters, a rival gang and the history between their leader and Dutch, beef between Arthur and John, Dutch not understanding the words lie low as we begin to piss off Leviticus Cornwall, the treatment of Native Americans that will come into the story later, and the botched ferry job in Blackwater that's the whole reason they're on the run in the first place. So in terms of storytelling, introducing this much stuff is really impressive while doing actual missions. There's a reason people say this is the best story in gaming. It takes its time to tell the story. If we look at another open world game that doesn't focus on setting up a story, we get GTA 5. Now, don't get me wrong, it does set up some story, with Michael faking his death and whatnot, but the focus here is gameplay and characters. Can you really tell me what the story of GTA 5 was? It's just you doing the government's dirty work as an excuse for performing heists. The first mission clocks in at 30 minutes. I know you're not able to play as all 3 characters after the first mission, but you are able to fully explore the world and prove that the Second Amendment is a great idea. GTA knows its high points, the characters and the open world, so has a quick introduction to get to them. Red Dead Redemption 2 is a much more story-focused game, so has to spend more time setting up the story and introducing more characters. I do understand the criticisms of Chapter 1, especially on repeat playthroughs where you have to push through the first 2 hours of the game to get to the open world. This is a big criticism of other open world games, like Fallout 3, where you have to live through the first 19 years of your character's life before you're let loose in the world. But those type of games are about exploration and meeting the local weirdos. Red Dead 2 can get away with this opening because it's such a story-focused game, so has to take its time to tell it. Once it's set up the story and introduced its mechanics, you can find how immersive and real the world is. Red Dead Redemption 2 is one of the most immersive experiences in games, coming from the insane amount of detail Rockstar put into this game. Starting with Arthur himself, the game has some survival mechanics with you having to stay on top of 3 meters, your health, stamina, and deadeye. These are made of 2 parts, the bar that curves around the outside and the core. The core is the part you want to focus on as you play. How full the center is will determine how fast the outer bar will regenerate. It's also the last part of your meter. Once the outer bar runs out, the core will deplete. Depending on which stat runs out, you won't be able to use Deadeye or Sprint or, live. It's these cores that food and drink will replenish or deplete. The outer bar works as you would expect. It decreases when you use it and increases when you're not. It's this part that grows when you level up your stats by using them individually. Winning fights, hunting, and fishing all increase your health. Running around and swimming will increase your stamina. Landing headshots and using Deadeye will increase your Deadeye meter. I really like this system because instead of getting XP that you can spend on whatever you want, you have to actively work on what you want to improve. Want more health? Harass the locals. Want more stamina? Run around in a circle for a while. It's not too difficult to keep Arthur well fed. Cooking any meat that you get from hunting will give you food that mostly fills all 3 cores. If you don't want to hunt or cook, you can buy lesser foods from the general stores around the map. And, like in real life, you can always turn to drugs to reach your goals, either completely refilling your cores or making them temporarily infinite. There are other factors that will affect your cores, like not wearing suitable clothing for the climate will make your cores drain faster, and Arthur's weight will also change depending on how much he eats. A bigger Arthur will be able to take more damage, but his stamina will drop quicker, and a slimmer Arthur will have better fitness, but won't be able to take as much punishment. It gives you a bit more control over your playstyle, which I like. These aren't the only cores you'll have to take care of, as your horse will have 2 themselves, one for health and one for stamina. Like Arthur, you can level them up, but only up to a certain point, as each breed is different, with some breeds having better health and others better stamina. You do begin to care for your horse because of these mechanics. Having to feed and clean it, actively caring for it, really bonds you to it, changing it from a mode of transportation that you don't care for to a travelling companion you look after. This is incorporated into the game as you have 4 bond levels with your horse, each of which not only increase some stats and unlock some better movement options like rearing and drifting, but Arthur will also change how he interacts with the horse as well, being more affectionate with each level increase.
You're okay, boy. You're a good boy.
Although, this isn't as affectionate as it could have been.
It sounds like you're not talking to a horse. And I was like, what do you mean? And he played it back, and I was like, you're all right, girl.
This bonding level extends to the end of the game, where during the last mission with Arthur, when your horse gets shot, if you don't have a high enough bond with your horse, Arthur will just keep moving forward. But if Arthur is bonded with his horse, he'll go back to comfort the creature and say goodbye. The game repeats this trick with Arthur himself, as you take him through the more mundane parts of life, such as bathing to keep himself clean, unless you want to have a chat with Miss Grimshaw, or you have to pay her for the privilege of cleaning yourself. It makes Arthur feel like a real person, as he has to shave every few days if you want to keep the style you like. His hair is the same, with it realistically growing over time, so you have to go to the hairdressers regularly to keep the same style. Alternatively, if you want to change hairstyles, you have to wait for your hair to grow before you can. This can be sped up with hair tonics that will also let your hair and beard grow as long as possible. It's these details that really make Arthur feel real, and really takes advantage of the interactivity of video games. I kind of wish you could take it further by having the option to make it more of a survival game, with having to make Arthur sleep regularly and having shopkeepers refuse service if you're too dirty. And clearly, I'm not alone, as there's a mod that adds these types of features, including a urination core with nearly 180,000 downloads. The gameplay continues to add to this, with the player having to cock their gun by re-pulling one of the triggers before they can shoot, or having to stay close to their horse as it won't be able to hear Arthur's whistle if they get too far. This realism is especially shown in the world of Red Dead 2. The hunting mechanics are incredibly detailed. As you ride along, you'll find tracks in the mud and can follow them. You need to study the animal first to check the quality of the pelt, varying between 1 and 3 stars. There's a lot you need to check before you take a shot at an animal. Wind direction, as Arthur's smell can scare off animals. What weapon you're going to use, these, as a too powerful gun will destroy smaller animal pelts, and a weaker gun will take too many shots to bring down a bigger animal, also ruining the pelt. Ensuring all that, you also need to get a clean kill to get a good pelt. Usually a headshot will do. After the kill, you'll get a detailed animation of Arthur skinning the carcass, giving you the meat and letting you sell or use the pelt. Skinning does, however, lower the value of your animal if you choose to sell it. You can use baits to draw out certain animals as well if you prefer. If, however, that sounds too boring, for bigger animals, you can chase them down on your horse, use a lasso and stab them, as this doesn't damage the pelts at all. There's also fishing. These mechanics are seriously detailed and lets you roleplay as the hunter that shot Bambi's mum.
Quick! The thicket! Faster! Faster, Bambi! Don't look back! We made it! We made it, Mother!
Just remember, just because you're a hunter doesn't mean you're the only one out there, as animals will hunt other animals. They will even hunt you. If you're on horseback and a predator gets too close, your horse will get scared and throw you off, basically guaranteeing that you're going to be lunch. While exploring the map, I found a guy trapped on a rock by some wolves. Unfortunately for the NPC, this was during my dishonourable playthrough, so I just stood there and watched. Oh, he's gonna make it! You can use this to your advantage, as some animals will help you get rid of evidence. No, not me! Let's try that again. Just need a new volunteer. After a quick chat with him,
You having fun? I'm having fun.
we can feed the wildlife. Well, that was disappointing. The pigs did more than that. Apparently, you need to chuck them into the water first? That's more like it. There are over 200 animals in the game, each programmed to act like they do in real life. For example, you can find birds hunting fish and rabbits, cats scratching fences, dogs begging, a bear fighting a pack of wolves, and loads more. It's insane the amount of detail they put into something that's easily missable. Most importantly though, you can pet the dog.
You okay, boy?
The NPCs are the same. There are so many small details about the NPCs that adds to the immersion of this world. Most games have NPCs as set dressing, something to make the world look better and more alive, maybe reacting to something the player does, but not much else. This game adds more to them, with Arthur being able to converse with the people you meet around the world. The conversations aren't complicated or deep, with the only options to interact with them being either greet or antagonize, which I'm sure you could figure out boils down to be nice or be a dick. It still adds a lot to make the world feel more personal, or if you're looking for a laugh, you can do the greet, antagonize option when interacting with them.
Your face looks familiar. Reminds me of the last time I lifted my horse's tail.
You can also do this around camp, but if you piss people off too much, you'll get knocked out, unless you do it to Micah, in which case, no one cares. Depending on the time of day, NPCs will perform different tasks, leaving their house at the start of the day, doing their job, and then returning home. Following a farmer in Valentine, you will see them get up, head to work, move hay bales, stop for a smoke, eat and drink, and then head off to the bar. In Saint Denis, an NPC will walk around and sit in a park, and then do some window shopping. This even extends to camp. Following Uncle around, you'll see him wake up, wash himself, start drinking, continue drinking, playing some banjo, and then pass out. So not only do NPCs have a schedule, it will change depending on what job they do and where they are in the map. There are a number of small details that make this world feel so real. NPCs will eat food realistically, rather than their fork going up and down. They'll cut up and correctly pick up the food until they finish their plate. Lumber yards will have NPCs cutting down trees and then sawing said trees, moving along the trunk as they cut it into sections. The train will slow down in built up areas, as I learnt the hard way.
I'ma put shit.
It didn't even kill him. The damage modelling on the NPCs is impressive as well, like this guy who I shot in the neck for morally correct reasons, and he ran off before dying from blood loss, or this guy who I shot in the back like a hero, and he slowly bled out. Well, that was disturbing. All these details don't just appear in a game. According to an interview with Variety, it took 2,000 people working for 8 years to create this. Roger Clark, the man behind Arthur Morgan, spent 5 years working on Red Dead 2, either in a sound booth or in a spandex suit, due to an absolutely massive script.
If you take the side missions out, the script is about as tall as me.
Not all the work was done by the actors. The animators and programmers did a lot as well. There's a GDC interview with the lead AI and gameplay programmer at Rockstar, where he talks about making the horses feel realistic, going through early builds and the difficulty they faced to make sure the player would care for the horse. And for those of you wondering, yes, they did cover a horse in polka dots to help with animations and programming. All of this work and effort does raise an interesting question. How far is too far in terms of realism? The idea of gaming is escapism, you know, getting away from the tedium of life. So adding the tedium of life back into a game kind of defeats the point, right? Rockstar has put so much work into the world to make it feel realistic, to the point they made some poor sod program horse testicles to react correctly to the temperature. Most of this is done in the service of immersion. All the details of the NPCs, animals, and the world in general create a sense of realism I've never seen in a video game. It really makes you feel like you're in the Old West. The more tedious parts of the realism, those that impact the gameplay, like having to keep your guns clean to keep them effective, works for this type of game because of all the detail they put into the non-gameplay. Having to hold down a button for Aloy to loot something in Horizon Zero Dawn is much more frustrating than waiting for Arthur to loot a body because of all the work they put in elsewhere in the game. In Horizon, it feels like a waste of time. Here, it feels like someone would actually have to do this to get their supplies. The animation also helps, as Aloy just reaches down and comes away with whatever, whereas Arthur will go through people's pockets or rip up a plant to collect it. All of this tedium leads to a more realistic feeling world, and more importantly for the story, characters. Does the realism take away from the fun of the game? Yes, simply put, yes it does. Having to stop to cook, eat, take care of your horse, the longer animation styles do take you away from the fun parts of the gameplay, but it makes those parts more satisfying because of all the small bits of maintenance you have to do before it. The mission structure matches this, with Arthur having to prepare for heists by stealing an oil wagon or blowing a bridge. It makes doing the heist more enjoyable and the payout feel earned. In doing all this, really buying into the setting of the Old West, where just living is a struggle, really makes Arthur feel like a living, breathing person. All of this work put into Arthur, the NPCs, and the world itself is here to make the game as immersive as possible. The game wants you to take your time, to throw yourself into the setting, and because of that, begin to really care for Arthur and the things he cares for. Having to keep Arthur clean, fed, and warm, while navigating the worlds and the dangers in it, makes you feel more attached to Arthur. The reason why this scene hits so hard is because of all the time and care you put into Arthur here. With all the work they put into making the world feel real, let's look at how they made it feel alive. Is that really what I wrote? That's fucking awful. Red Dead 2 takes place in 5 fictional states. Most of the game takes place in these 3 states, with the last 2 opening up during the epilogue. These last 2 states should be familiar to anyone who's played the first game, as everything from Blackwater to Tumbleweed is from the original game. This is saved for the end of the game, as south of West Elizabeth, you're wanted dead or alive. So you can explore it, but chances are you'll be chased out by the law, and attempting to enter New Austin will get you featured in a 2010 YouTube video. Although, I don't recommend doing this, as I spent an hour trying to get through West Elizabeth. The game does a good job of making each area feel unique, but also seamlessly blending them together when travelling from one to another. After Chapter 1, you're able to explore most of the world as soon as you're moved into Horseshoe Overlook, but the quest design discourages this, as most of the main story takes place around a single location for each chapter. Chapter 2 focuses on the town of Valentine, Chapter 3, Rhodes, Chapter 4, Saint Denis, Chapter 5, Guarma. Chapter 6 has the most spread out area of missions, mostly taking place along the east side of the map. Part 1 of the epilogue, Pronghorn Ranch, and Part 2 of the epilogue, Beach's Hope. By having the missions structured this way, the game gives the impression that the world is expanding as you progress in the story, but still offers players the option to explore the world as they desire. The issue with this design though, is that the side quests don't become available in an area until the main story moves into that area, so while the player can explore when they want, the game heavily discourages it, which is a shame as the open world is one of the best things about it. A lot of open world games just feel like they're made with big, impressive maps, but then did nothing to fill it out, giving a sense of emptiness. It's why I tend to avoid open world games. I think it's just really boring to run around a pretty map with nothing to do in it. Ghost of Tsushima is guilty of this. A good story, fun combat, and a beautiful world, but they fill it with the same 6 things over and over again. Did anyone enjoy having to chase a fox for the 40th time? Ubisoft, the game company famous for making average games filled with bloated content, have really started to struggle as people have realised that these games aren't worth the money, even when those games are attached to popular IPs. Star Wars Outlaws actually sold so poorly that Ubisoft's stock has dropped 29% since it was released. I would say that Red Dead 2 has the best open world in a game. It's not perfect, it does have some tedious collectibles, like the dinosaur bones and cigarette cards, but for the most part, Rockstar has filled their game with really enjoyable side content. The side quests in this game are definitely a highlight. They'll randomly appear on your map as you progress. As the game has quite a serious story, most of the weird and wacky parts that Rockstar is known for is saved for the side quests, called Stranger Missions, and calling them strange is a bit of an understatement.
Do I look like I should entertain children? No.
For example, in the mission, The Mercies of Knowledge, you will help Professor Andrew Bell III as he invents the electric chair. First, you have to get him 100 gallons of moonshine, and you do get a good chemistry joke upon delivery.
Oh, this wonderful methanol.
After that, you have to get him a permit for the execution, and a willing volunteer, who Arthur delights in explaining what's going to happen to him.
They wouldn't let you do this to me. They wouldn't.
Oh, they would. And we got a permit and everything. You was in animal husbandry, am I right? Well, you ever seen lightning strike livestock, Mr. McDaniels?
The mission ends with Professor Bell demonstrating how humane his new invention is. Another mission with a mad scientist has you helping out Marko Dragic. You find him showing off a radio-controlled boat to potential investors by blowing up other boats and avoiding mines, all the while calling you an idiot. He then proves this by having you walk around a thunderstorm while holding metal rods. Sorting out the electricity to his lab, he reveals what he's been working on, which is a bit of a disappointment.
Isn't he wonderful?
If you return to his lab, you can find Marko dead and the robot missing. Next to his body is an electric lantern that changes colour depending on which way you're facing, and following the red light, you'll make your way into the mountains and find the robot sitting in the snow. Probably for the best that Marko died, to be honest, as searching his lab, you can find a note with his plan for the future. My personal favourite of the more wacky side missions is with French artist Charles Chatenay. Finding him in a bar, he describes himself as
I am a prize, how do you say, all ass.
Later, you'll find a very angry man breaking into a house and pulling out the artist, upset that he slept with his wife. Saving him from the angry husband, or leaving him to the husband's wrath, he'll invite you to a gallery before suspiciously going back into the house. Heading to the gallery, you get the funniest cutscene in the game.
Hey, you got a picture of my wife here. In her delicates.
Henry, is that your behind? Why would you be showing it to that man?
That's my mama. As nude as the day she was born.
Stop looking at my husband's buttocks.
Stop looking at my mama.
Well, maybe she shouldn't have exposed herself like that.
This is disgusting.
The nerve on you!
That's it!
Come on, Mildred. This is no place for us.
Having pissed off most of Saint Denis, Charles decides to flee the city in drag, but instead of shaving his beard to appear more feminine, he just paints his face and beard white, and while fleeing, he'll snog Arthur to hide from someone he thinks will recognise him. After he gets on a boat and sails for more enlightened lands, you receive a letter from him, sadly ending our time with Charles Chatenay. Although you can find this face cut into a cliff, a clear reference to Mount Rushmore, and a man hanging around. Looting him will give you a letter that says he lost his wife to someone that sounds quite familiar. I'm not going to go through every wacky side mission, but I will give an honourable mention to the two idiots that tried to prove how tough and brave they are to impress a woman, culminating in them letting you kick them in the nuts. And then going over a waterfall in barrels. Now, not every mission is wacky or humorous. Near the end of the game, if you head north, you can run into a woman burying her recently deceased husband, and Arthur will help her by first teaching her how to hunt, and then how to shoot, and returning as John, you'll find her thriving in the wilderness. If, however, you only do her first mission as Arthur, and return as John, you'll find her dead. It's unclear how she died, as it's unlikely she starved, as the previous mission is Arthur teaching her to hunt. The next mission you're meant to do with Arthur is teaching her how to shoot, and while exploring, you can find a man who talks about her.
Don't know what she's doing out there in the middle of nowhere, but turns out she's a widow. She asked me to leave, but in a real nice way. Made me feel good.
So while she could have starved, there is a stalker after her and she never learnt to shoot. Another mission, which I think is a great example of storytelling, is the mission The Iniquities of History. In Rhodes, you can find a homeless man on a bench, complaining how they've taken everything from him, asking us to get a few things from his old house. Heading to the house, you'll find a notice of repossession on the front door, and upon entering, we'll get some nice environmental storytelling as you find empty bottles and a child's drawing of him, thanking him for talking to their class about his job. You might begin to feel sorry for him as he fell on hard times, struggling for money and losing his wife. It gets a bit strange when you find a letter from a plantation house saying he's no longer needed, another note of his termination due to complaints from customers and employees, and finally, a letter from his son asking him to leave his family alone. After finding the old man's watch and pistol, the last thing you need is his ledger, and a photograph shows a trapdoor, revealing what the man's job really was. A diary by an escaped slave describing his recapture and torture tells us he hunted down escaped slaves, and the ledger shows how many people he returned to servitude. Confronting him, Arthur would do the appropriate thing.
They took it away. Pissed on my legacy.
Oh man, some jobs ain't for saving. And some legacies,
Oh,
they are for pissing
what
on.
are you doing? That's my history.
After the cutscene, it's up to the player to decide his fate. You can kill him, gaining some honour, or leave him. It's completely up to you to decide what he deserves. Should he be killed for his crimes against humanity? Or should he live, wallowing in self-pity and a terrible life?
I still exist. Oh.
I really like this mission as it twists your assumptions. Most people give this guy the benefit of the doubt, wanting to help him with his suffering until you find out why he's been forgotten by society, finishing with the player having to decide what he deserves. I think one of the most impressive parts of this is that each stranger mission is completely animated. There are 31 missions here, each with a dedicated cutscene and characters. Most can be done as either Arthur or John. To show how impressive this is, look at Ghost of Tsushima. When doing the side quests, the camera pulls out so you can't see the characters' faces, meaning they don't have to animate them. I should point out I do like this game. I don't think there's anything wrong with doing this, especially for smaller companies that should put their resources into more important areas of the game. Here though, you get a cutscene to start the collectible side quests that everyone hates. That's dedication. Next to the stranger missions are the random events. As you travel around the world, you encounter NPCs who have their own problems. Some are short and sharp, like the guy who's trying to get a rock out of his horse's shoe, and when you talk to him, the horse tries to remove the rock itself.
Your horse?
Or my personal favourite, this drunk guy has crashed his wagon and is trying to blame a rock for this mess. You'll also run into rival gangs. There are the expected ambushes and attacks. One that did take me by surprise is when I set up camp. Some of the Murphy brood threatened me. Don't worry, you can make them regret annoying you. I'm embarrassed to admit I actually fell for one of their traps. I was attacked by the Murphy brood and they ran off, so I gave chase and fell into a hole. The attacks are to be expected in this type of world, but they add to this as you'll run into them doing their own thing. They can be found breaking their fellow gang members out of prison wagons or committing their own crimes, and they get aggressive if you get too close. But you can defuse the situation.
Why don't you mind your business and keep walking, huh?
Don't have to tell me twice.
That's right. Run along now.
You did not just say that. It's stuff like this that makes them feel like a real thing in the world, rather than them just being people that you shoot during the story missions. It's just another addition that makes the world feel more fleshed out. A lot of the random events will give you a choice that will affect your honour. Usually, you'll find someone on the side of the road that needs help, either needing an item or to be taken somewhere as the horse has died or something. I'm going to get into this more later, but I like how these decisions affect the story and Arthur. Having to help someone, either by fetching them medicine after they've been bitten by a snake, or having to take time out of your finite life to take an NPC to a town after a friend's horse has died on her, is a choice that you have to make in gameplay, not just a choice that you make at some point in the story. Seeing the NPCs getting into trouble or needing help makes the world feel alive, especially as not every decision is black and white. Helping some people can result in rewards later on, like a guy that you save from a snake bite can be found in Valentine later on that offers to let you use his tab in the gun store. However, helping people can also have consequences. West of Valentine, you can encounter a man skipping stones, talking about a woman. If you choose to help, you're given some advice.
You care about this girl? Stand up for yourself. She'll come around.
Yeah? I've been waiting.
Trust me, kid. There ain't so many good men out there. Make yourself one of the good ones.
Thanks, mister. I hope you're right.
You can return as John and find him again, where you'll be complaining about her and not too happy about Arthur.
Never known a more evil woman!
Another example of this, outside Saint Denis, you can find this guy, who's not doing so well. Taking him to the doctor, he'll get his arm amputated, which you can watch if you desire. you weirdo. Later in the game, you can find the man about to be hanged for murdering a woman that insulted his disability, so maybe saving everyone isn't the best choice. Seeing these consequences gives the world some texture, as not everyone in it is a good person, and the really bad people will get bounties put on them. Collecting a wanted poster from a police station, you can hunt down bounties and bring them in dead or alive. I bring these up because I like when you take them in alive, you'll hear them try to bargain, explain themselves, or threaten you, and I enjoy the fact that you can smack them to shut them up.
I seem to keep blacking out.
Later, you can find the people you bring in being publicly executed.
Hell, I'm weary of it. Pull it!
Other than an encounter with Uncle getting kicked out of a bar or saving Bill from bounty hunters, you won't see the gang out and about in the world, and I think this is a missed opportunity. Seeing members of the gang doing their own thing, committing crimes or running errands or whatever, would give the impression that while Arthur is out doing stuff, so are the rest of the gang. It could even add to their characters, like if you could find Bill stealing from a shop in a heavily populated area that would be difficult to escape from, as opposed to someone like Hosea who would be smarter about it and rob a shop that would be easier to escape from, or you could find Lenny failing a robbery because he's less experienced than the other characters and you'd have to save him from the shopkeeper. Now, that's not to say the gang doesn't do anything. One of the most impressive parts of this game is the camp itself. The interactions at camp are where most of the character work is done, especially for the characters that don't appear much in the main missions. With a total of 23 gang members throughout the story, it's remarkable that the game gives them all characterization. The main story, of course, focuses more on certain characters than others, with some only getting 1 or 2 missions, compared to others that get a lot more, and that's just standard storytelling. There's no issue with that, but after completing the story and walking away from it, I still had a good idea of who each character was, and that's due to these little interactions around the camp. Some are quite funny, like when Uncle asks out Grimshaw.
Well, I think I'm getting a little long in the tooth for...
Oh, nonsense. How about tomorrow?
Well, let me think.
So that's a yes?
Okay.
Well, now if I'm going to go out with you, I'm going to have to look my best, so can I borrow $10?
You'll also see what characters think of each other, like how most of the gang don't trust Kieran and believe he's still an O'Driscoll, or how Grimshaw treats the women of the gang if she doesn't believe they're doing enough. There's even some complete character arcs for some of them. Molly and Dutch's relationship will begin with them flirting and being happy, but she also isolates herself as she doesn't do any work for the gang, neither doing chores around the camp or making any money, which really pisses off the other women. As the game goes on, her and Dutch's relationship begins to deteriorate as you find them arguing more and more, and as she has no other friends around the camp, she'll become more isolated and paranoid, resenting Dutch for how her life has gone. Even the main story ignores her as she will attempt to talk to Arthur about Dutch, but is interrupted by Uncle, and you never find out what she has to say. All this culminates in her having a breakdown and confessing to betraying Dutch, and then gets shot. Later on, you find out that she never actually did rat on the gang, meaning she died for nothing. This is one of the most tragic characters in the game, and you can completely miss it. Another good example is Karen. At the start of the game, she will do what she can to help the gang, doing chores and working to secure money and information. She also helps plan and lead one of the few heists that goes well in the game. But after Sean's death, who she had a relationship with, and with the law closing in on the group, Karen will fall more and more into the bottle until you can only find her drunk at the camp.
Look who it is. Oh, Arthur. Big, tough Arthur.
After the gang falls apart, you can't find her again, with the best clue to what happened to her is Tilly's letter saying she believed Karen drank herself to death. It's not all doom and gloom though, as Reverend Swanson has the opposite character arc, with him at the start of the game being an alcoholic and drug user, proved by the fact that you can find his Bible around the camp that has been hollowed out to hide a bottle of morphine. But as the gang falls apart, he decides this isn't how he wants to go, leaving the camp and kicking his addictions, shown by his change in appearance. During the epilogue, if you buy a newspaper, you can find an article that says he's opened up a church in New York. That's 3 really interesting character arcs that outshine most character work in other games, and they're completely missable. These conversations also help flesh out other characters. At Sean's party, Bill will drunkenly discuss with John about how he wishes to be Dutch's favourite.
People care about that?
Sure. I don't know. Well, me or not me. It's like, okay. I love liquor. I love liquor. But liquor don't love me.
Due to events in the story, saving Sean from bounty hunters or getting Jack back from Angelo Bronte, the camp will have a celebration, and these are the most notable camp events. More or less all the characters will take part in it, so while the usual events feature 2 or 3 people, here you get like 20 characters interacting with one another, and not just sitting around a campfire talking. They move around, sing, dance, fight. When you save Sean, he'll get on a box and give a speech saying he missed everyone. These parties are some of the few times you'll see most of the gang happy at the same time. Not everyone is, but most people are, and the drunken conversations are well done.
Hell, even old man Strauss is more of a laugh than you, boy.
Well, thank you, kid.
I'm sorry, Arthur. It's because I love you, Arthur. Really, it is.
It's these moments that really make the gang feel like they care for one another, and why, during the final chapter, the camp feels like it's falling apart, as everyone keeps to themselves and there are very few interactions, making it feel so lifeless. There are other ways to interact with your fellow gang members. You can find them looking for help with robberies and other stuff. These are a good way to make some money or get some rare weaponry, and they involve some of the weirder parts of the game. Doing a robbery with Javier, you'll go to Ches Porter to steal from a family of outlaws, but they've isolated themselves from society for so long that they have their own dialect.
What? No, you didn't get all the jam.
You shut your gulper, or I'll flagger your felt, I will.
During these robberies and whatnot, you also get treated to some dialogue that will continue to flesh out the characters. Joining Lenny in a stagecoach robbery, he'll talk about being on the run after killing the men who murdered his father until he joined the gang. There are other activities to do around camp, like dominoes or losing fingers, that you can do for fun, as well as in the wider world, but doing them in the camp will treat you to more dialogue that adds to the characters. Most of the content in this game is in and around the towns and villages you visit. However, venturing off the beaten track, there are a lot of secret locations and Easter eggs to discover. The most obvious of these locations is New Austin from the first Red Dead Redemption game. The story missions in the epilogue only have one mission that takes place in this area. The rest of it is for you to explore at your own leisure. Most of the stuff you can find in the world are just small Easter eggs and references. There's a hole in the ground that lives a hobbit, a meditating monk marveling at the magnificent mountains, motivated to maintain their mellow mood, meaning missing motions to make meaningful mentions of my mild-mannered motives. Meanwhile, mischievous maneuvers manipulate the monk to migrate. You can also find a witch's hut with a bubbling cauldron, and for those of you who would drink a strange liquid, number 1, you're the reason bleach bottles come with warnings, and 2, you can drink the witch's brew, but Arthur will pass out, but it does refill all your cores. Down the hatch, I say. Now, for people who have played a Rockstar game, you know they enjoy adding some horror to the world.
I'm waiting for you. I'm waiting.
You can find a ghost train, or meet Satan. Some parts require a bit more effort though. Throughout the game, you can stumble across 3 murders. At each scene, there's a piece of a map to be found, leading you to the killer. Finding his lair, you can investigate the basement, finding a letter the killer wrote to a newspaper editor, upset at the lack of respect he's gotten from the paper, as well as a few trophies he's kept. Inspecting the knife, you'll be knocked out, and after listening to his insane rambling, you can fight to knock him out, letting you take him to the sheriff in Valentine. Be warned though, he will attack the sheriff and you'll have to kill him. This horror even extends to some of the enemies you'll encounter on your travels. During one of my playthroughs, riding through the bayou in Lemoyne, I found a hanging body. Shooting it down and looting it resulted in finding a note describing how they were hunted down by the night folk, who then attacked me, having left the body as a trap. They are completely silent, use basic weapons like knives and bows to attack, and according to the wiki, are the only enemy that will intentionally try to kill your horse. How fucked up is that? Talking of creepy characters, you can find the Strange Man. During Red Dead 1, you'll get a stranger mission called I Know You. Finding the stranger, you'll encounter a well-dressed man who clearly knows John, but John has no memory of. The stranger will then tell you of a man about to cheat on his wife and ask you to intercept him before he does anything, leaving the choice of whether to stop or encourage him up to the player. The second time you meet him, he'll give you another moral choice about either helping or robbing a nun. The final time you meet him is at Beech's Hope, John's farm, and John becomes enraged that the man won't explain who he is and fires at him, with each bullet having no effect. There are a lot of theories as to who the strange man is, the most popular theory being that he was God or the devil, judging whether John has truly changed or not by giving him moral choices. The one thing I can tell you though is he's not Trelawney. I know they look similar, but John would definitely have recognised him. He does appear in Red Dead 2 as well, in a smaller way. Finding this small shack, there are cryptic writings on the wall, and a painting that will slowly be finished, revealing our well-dressed friend, and you can find him in the mirror. The shack will also change depending on your honour level, with the pictures changing from deers to wolves depending on if you have high or low honour, respectively. He also seems to have done a deal with a man named Moon. If, when you're playing as John, you feel nostalgic and travel to Armadillo, the first town you visit in the first game, you'll discover it's been hit by cholera. Looking in the shack, you can find a map of Armadillo with a handwritten note on it. Visiting the general store in town, you'll find the aforementioned moon with a picture of the strange man behind him.
Who's that?
I don't know. It's just a little portrait somebody gave me once. I always quite liked it. Why?
No reason. Just seemed familiar.
Looting him will reward you with a letter from his daughter, talking about her recent marriage and that she's become pregnant, so clearly this guy made his choice. The strange man isn't the only mystery in the game. When exploring the map, chances are you'll run into a British man yelling for his friend.
Has anyone seen an Englishman called Gavin?
Speaking to the man, he'll explain that his friend disappeared one morning and he's been searching ever since. While this is already weird, when playing as John, you can run into him again, still looking for Gavin. 8 years later and he's still searching, looking a lot rougher now though. You can find a letter on him from a friend in England. First of all, it reveals his name to be Nigel, and second, it seems Nigel may not be of sound mind, as the PS hints that something's up with Nigel. This has led some fans to believe that Nigel suffers from a mental health illness, like schizophrenia or dissociative identity disorder, meaning that Gavin doesn't actually exist. Other theories say that Gavin is real, but left because Nigel was too codependent. There is some evidence for this, with lines like,
No, we were best mates. I mean, really, best mates. He'd never leave me. Never. Gavin!
as well as some cut content referring to a restraining order from Gavin. And to be fair, Nigel looking for Gavin for 8 years does lend some credence to this theory. So clearly they put a lot of work into the open world, but what did they achieve with all this? Well, they created the best open world in gaming. There's a reason people say that the best thing to do in Red Dead 2 is nothing, just wander around the world and let something happen to them. Having a big map but nothing to do makes it a chore to travel around. Here, some of the best parts of the game comes from traversing the world, running into people needing help, or finding a rival gang committing their own crimes that you can disrupt makes the world feel alive. The immersion the world gives is something unparalleled in other games. This is what AAA games should be, and yes, I do understand that most studios don't have the money and resources to make an open world to this scale, but I'd rather have something smaller that feels like a living, breathing world than a bigger map that has nothing to do in it. The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time does this well, with a small map and a few locations, but each location is filled up with so much life that makes it memorable. Red Dead 2 expands on this by filling each location with its own unique feeling, with farmers in Valentine to citygoers in Saint Denis. This is one of the few games I don't actively use the fast travel, which, if you didn't know, you can unlock by upgrading the camp. Instead, I prefer to ride around the world, enjoying my time with Arthur and the people he would encounter, whether they need help, need to be stopped, or just existing. They all felt unique in their own way, and by fast traveling, I would lose out on this feeling. It's why keeping the fast travel an upgrade rather than something you get at the start of the game is in the game's favour. Most people would use fast travel rather than ride there themselves, losing the immersion that the game makers have meticulously crafted in the world, making the game actively worse. Even when you've unlocked it, the game restricts it as you can only use it from your camp or pay a driver to take you to a specific location. Chances are, even if you use it, you still have to ride somewhere, enjoying the world and what it has to offer. All of this summed up is that the game wants you to feel a part of the world. I spoke earlier of how realism is used to create immersion, and when combined with the interaction in the world, creates an experience I haven't seen in gaming. Yes, you have to put the effort in, but by actively engaging with the world and characters, it creates the most immersive world any game has had. Sadly, the effort they put into the world and realism doesn't reach all parts of the game. Many cultures throughout human history have put purposeful flaws in their work, known as deliberate imperfection. Examples of this can be seen in religious work due to the belief that only God can create something perfect. Medieval English stonemasons put deliberate mistakes in when building cathedrals and churches, or Persian rug makers putting a mistake in their rugs, even after spending years on some of them. Rockstar keeps this tradition alive in their masterpiece with the gameplay. Starting with the more obvious, Arthur will, on occasion, decide that instead of doing the action you want, or act like a drunkard, get confused and commit a crime. This is usually caused by the animations of the game. While throwing a piece of dynamite, Arthur decided to throw underhand, hitting the small barrier in front of him and blowing up Charles. Having longer animations means the game wants Arthur in a certain place to start the animation, but if the pathfinding gets confused, Arthur will wander around lost. Arthur's dignity will also take a hit if you can't get a prompt to pop, meaning you'll have to continuously make Arthur awkwardly bump up against whatever to make that prompt appear. Now, these aren't huge issues, They happen infrequently enough that I found them funny instead of annoying. The control scheme, however, frequently annoyed me. This game is not difficult in the slightest. The aim assist means that you can aim vaguely close to someone and Arthur will snap to them. This is very much done on purpose. Making the game easy with these type of mechanics means that the game is more accessible to players. Something like Dark Souls is not very accessible due to the difficulty, but this game, even the most casual gamer can pick it up and play through without much trouble. There is a reason for this, but it's also why these games become so big, because everyone can play them. But difficulty doesn't increase throughout the game either. The enemies you fight at the start are as difficult as the enemies you fight at the end. At most, the game will throw more enemies at you by the end of the game, but I never noticed a significant increase in difficulty. This also helps with the realism the game works so hard to create. Instead, the real difficulty comes from the control scheme. The cover system can be quite broken at times. While trying to hide behind a rock, Arthur instead just climbs on top of it for no reason. Or here, when I was trying to hide behind this fence, and Arthur decided it was better to stand in front of this tree, you can see me stop as I spam the cover button before Arthur runs off. Arthur's turning circle is terrible as well. I know you won't believe me, but I promise I pulled down on the joystick and Arthur just jumped off the building. It's hard to show in a video, but the controls are slow at times. Arthur will sometimes take a moment to respond to what you want. The control scheme in general is bad. The same button can have opposite actions. To interact with people, you pull the left trigger to focus on them, letting you talk to them, unless Arthur decides that's not what you want and aims at them, making the NPC panic and most likely resulting in you getting a wanted level. Or even when the focus happens correctly, the button to interact with people is also the melee button. I was trying to antagonize this farmer, but kicked one of his sheep instead. I suppose it did antagonize him, but still, I felt bad. Most of these issues come from an artistic choice for realism. I can appreciate that. Having the longer animations that can cause the input lag is a trade-off that the developers clearly made, and having Arthur be able to actively engage with the people you meet around the world is very impressive. Still, there are times when the decisions for gameplay are just annoying without leaning on the arguments for realism. While sprinting, I bumped into an NPC, and yeah, he should get angry and maybe start a fight or something, but I was immediately wanted for disturbing the peace and had to ride away to get rid of the law, all for slightly bumping into someone. The wanted system in this game, on paper, is a good idea. A game about being an outlaw should have this type of system, with your crimes being remembered and changing how people interact with you. Shopkeepers will remember if you previously robbed them, being more annoyed than normal.
The no-good town crook. People talk about what a piece of shit you are.
They'll also appear with bandages if you've shot them while liberating their money. If your bounty gets high enough, the police will start to recognise you if you get too close, and you can get bounty hunters chasing you, with bigger groups and even dogs attacking you if your bounty gets too high. If, however, when you first get your wanted level, if you're on foot and have your gun holstered, the police will attempt to arrest you, letting the player quick draw on them, or actually get arrested. This leads to a small cutscene of Arthur sitting in jail and having to be saved by one of the gang. That's not to say the game always holds you accountable for your crimes. This can be done by wearing a mask to hide your face, committing crimes without witnesses, or stopping those witnesses making it to the police by intimidating them or getting rid of them. When this works, it allows the player to plan crimes in intelligent and fun ways. Getting on a train, waiting for it to get out into the middle of nowhere, and then robbing the passengers and train before riding off without any consequences was immensely satisfying. Unfortunately, it rarely works like this. Every time I tried to rob a shop, I was always seen. Sometimes it was fair enough. Someone entered the shop at the wrong time and saw me committing a crime, and I like this as it adds to the risk of robbing a store. Like in real life, you can just have bad luck and have someone walk in, as I learnt as a teenage boy, and the game doing this adds to the realism. What ruins that sense of realism is when someone sees me through a wall, robbing the shop, and runs off to narc on me. This happened so many times. The game also restricts how you can rob stores. Out in the open, you have access to all your weapons, letting you choose how to approach someone in order to rob them. Silently sneak up on someone and take them out quietly, lasso them to stop them running off, or riding up to them and blowing their head off. In shops though, you can't access your weapon wheel, meaning you can't see if you need something in particular while in the shop. But more importantly to my point, it stops you from choosing how to approach a robbery. You have one option, or no option if you think about it, as you have to walk in and point a gun at the shopkeeper to initiate a robbery, and the game defaults you to your pistol. You can't sneak up and melee them, or immediately lasso them, or use a silent weapon, or anything except point your pistol at them. So if they fight back, you're going to attract attention when someone fires, and I would like this if I had a choice, as it would reward players for taking this into account and stopping the shopkeeper from fighting back before they had a chance. But no, you can only access your weapon wheel after you started the robbery, meaning if they pull out a weapon, you're screwed. Even after getting access to the weapon wheel, the game still restricts you as you can't melee the shopkeeper, no pistol whipping or using your knife. You might be thinking, why not just risk it? Just walk in, point your pistol and rob the register without shooting. It's quicker and quieter. And yeah, that would work, except if you leave the shopkeeper alone, there's a chance they'll become a witness and run out the back. By being more realistic with how the shopkeeper reacts, but restricting the player ruins the realism and immersion in a game where most of the mechanics are used to create the feeling of being in 1899. This is not helped by the fact that when you are wanted, the police can just teleport in to attack you. In a game with so many details just to add to the realism, police teleporting in can completely ruin that feeling. It makes sense in the story and themes of the game, with the West becoming more civilized and the police being something that Arthur can't defeat, only run away from. So yeah, I like that you can't just fight your way out, but I don't like how they just keep coming, no matter how many you kill. If they came in waves, letting the player kill all the police in the area and get some breathing room to escape before more police show up, rather than them just continuously teleporting in. These issues only affect players who play dishonorably, but the biggest issue with the gameplay is that the game restricts a lot of player freedom. There's the smaller stuff, like not being able to run in camp or not being able to cancel missions once you start without failing at first, which, yeah, are annoying, but the real issue with the gameplay is when it actively takes away choice from the player. Take, for example, the mission American Fathers. You have to sneak into an oil refinery to find evidence that the government is trying to move the Native Americans for oil. The game wants you to sneak through the oil refinery and make it to the office without being detected. However, when approaching the building, you'll find some stairs that lead to a ladder, letting you climb over the building to get to the office. I thought I was being so smart doing this, completely avoiding any chance of detection, but no, the game instantly fails you for doing this. It's just really strange that a game with such attention to detail, like you can find someone warning you about the guy in charge of a sheep auction before you have to deal with him, but in the gameplay, you can't do anything other than what Rockstar has preordained. When going to save Sean from bounty hunters, the game wants you to sneak up on these guards, but I just shot them instead, wanting to get on with the mission. But this goes against what the game wants, resulting in an instant failure for my cover being blown. Even though if you do it correctly, you start shooting as soon as you move on. The game really punishes you for this as well. In combat, or other situations where the player will die or fail and have to be reset, the checkpoints are well placed, meaning you won't lose much progress, but when you dare go against what Rockstar wants, you get sent so far back. The oil refinery mission, I had to start the mission again and re-sneak into the refinery. Saving Sean, I had to do the entire ride back to the stealth section. I doubt the developers wanted to punish players like this, because there are a few times where the game gives you an option. Robbing a stagecoach for Trelawney and getting the lockpick, the game lets you shoot the driver instead of the intended path, so there was some thought as to what players will choose, but they didn't do this for so many missions when the players can see other options, meaning they'll only be punished for daring to stray away from the golden path. I don't expect this to be like Fallout or something, where you can put different skill points to create your own character and approach problems in multiple ways. I don't want this to be a game where you can put points into something like Demolition and solve all your issues with dynamite. This game isn't about playing as anyone, you play as Arthur Morgan. In terms of abilities, everyone's Arthur is the same. You unlock the same skills at the same point in the story, regardless of the player's playstyle, and I like this because in the story, Arthur's the gang's enforcer, meaning he's good at fighting and shooting. Those are his defining traits, and the gameplay reflects that, as those are your choices when dealing with enemies. It would be a really weird disconnect between the story and gameplay if all the characters treated Arthur as the camp's muscle, but if the player put points into speech, Arthur could talk his way out of trouble. Arthur is a set character with his own skills and abilities. The game should just give you more freedom with those skills and abilities, like having the ability to sneak around people. At best, some missions will give the player a choice on how to approach it, which is usually whether you want to send the gang in first or you go first. The choice doesn't even matter, you still end up in the same firefight. During the epilogue, in the mission An Honest Day's Labour, you help Sadie capture bounties. The game gives you a choice to go in silently or shoot everyone at the start, and you might think that going in quietly will mean it's easier to get closer to your bounty, maybe rewarding the player if they do it without being discovered by letting you take them by surprise and skipping a chase or something. But no matter what you choose, going over this bridge triggers a shootout, making your choice meaningless. These decisions in the game aren't that big a deal, it's just a weird thing to add to the game where most of the choices are pointless. At best, it reinforces the idea that Arthur is high up in the gang, able to command how to approach certain situations, but it doesn't have any consequence, so what's the point? That question can be asked of quite a few gameplay features. A problem with a lot of the side content I was complimenting earlier is there's no incentive to do it. There's no incentive to return to the camp to see the character work, other than one of the gang members whinging at you every now and again.
I never took you for the lazy type.
Things like gambling and hunting lose their incentive because the main story gives you enough money that you don't need to do that other stuff to fill your wallet. Why would you bother hunting when a perfect sheep carcass sells for a bit over $2 or steal wagons for $25 when a random mission where you attack a cabin gives you $100? They put so much effort into the hunting with so many animals and different tactics needed to get the best quality meat, but I never bothered participating with it properly as I didn't need the high quality pelts for money. I just wanted meat for Arthur to cook and eat, meaning rather than slowly creeping up on an animal and using the correct weapon and ammo to get the best kill, I just rode in with a shotgun, pumped it full of lead, and skinned it to get the meat. And you get this no matter how you kill them. Other things that hunting gives you aren't worth it either. Upgrades that you need perfect pelts for are unnecessary as they just upgrade inventory space, but the starting inventory size is fine. I never struggled with its size. Camp upgrades as well aren't necessary. Other than upgrading Dutch's and Arthur's lodgings to unlock fast travel, it's not worth putting money into the camp. The characters don't really care either. Other than a comment from some of them, the mood around camp doesn't change. This is especially disappointing when certain upgrades talk about the morale of the camp. If the camp became more hostile if you didn't contribute to the camp, with more interactions like this.
Go sleep it off, you drunken buffoon. Excuse me. I have excused you quite enough. Go sleep it off, you drunk. Is that clear?
While more minigames and happier interactions appear if you help around the camp, would help motivate the player to do more chores and contribute. It makes these mechanics feel very surface level, without the depth that other areas of the game have. The game also takes away player control. I've spoke about locking guns off when in camp or in shops, but this also happens in missions. There are times the game will force you to slow down in order to let the characters get into place. Attacking the final O'Driscoll camp with Sadie, after clearing the barn, you run into the house to check on Sadie, hearing struggling upstairs, but Arthur doesn't run at all. It makes it feel like he doesn't care about Sadie, which is really weird because they have a proper heart-to-heart after this bit.
You okay?
Yeah. He was a good man, my Jakey.
The worst offender of the game, completely ignoring the player's inputs, is Lenny's death. For most character deaths in the game, they're done in cutscenes because the game wants to focus on the character reactions. As a very story-focused game, this makes sense. But Lenny's death was done in open gameplay, with the intention that there was nothing you could do to stop it. While other deaths can't be seen as the player's fault as they occur in cutscenes, here you can feel like it was your fault, except the game refuses to let you pull out your gun until Lenny has been shot. As soon as the two police officers came out, I immediately pulled the left trigger to aim my pistol, with the game flat out ignoring this input. There's not even an animation of Arthur looking shocked or anything that would explain why Arthur doesn't do anything. He just stands there and watches his friend get shot. It doesn't make me feel like I've let Lenny down. It feels like the game forcing the controls away from me before going, look at what you've done. What's really frustrating about this is that the game has a solution to the issue right in front of it. Two enemies come out onto the roof, don't take away control from the player, have it where no matter who the player shoots first, the other kills Lenny. It would work much better in making the player feel like no matter what they did, Lenny wouldn't survive, without taking away control from the player. The whole idea of gaming is that you're in control, and taking away that control like this ruins the immersion, the thing the rest of the game works so hard to create. I've been pretty negative about the gameplay so far, so let's balance the scales. The basic gameplay is very satisfying. Pulling headshots, pistol whipping people, just the violence in general is fun. Having a kill cam play when you pull off a cool headshot, especially when it looks like something out of a film, is very satisfying. In order to get the kill cam, it's a random chance after hitting a critical body part like the head or heart. You'll get three types of kill cam. The standard is just a simple zoom in of whoever you shot. It can cut to a different shot of the person you've killed, or you'll cut back to Arthur. Depending on your honor level, the colour of the kill cam will change, a nice addition that reflects on your playstyle, and you can get some more stupid ones. I have no idea how this guy died. I didn't kill him, so either his friend shot him, or he had a sudden, fatal heart attack. The game also features a first-person mode. I don't recommend playing this way for too long, but it does add some novelty to the game. Using two pistols at once is a lot of fun, if it does cost you a lot of bullets. It's impressive that they added animations for a mode they don't expect people to play. I doubt people would have complained if they couldn't see Arthur reload or throw a lasso in first person, if the game just pulled the guns down and came back up reloaded. No one would have complained, but the crazy sods did it. Obviously, I've spoken about the realism and how it's used in the open world and gameplay, but the game does also drop this realism in missions in order to increase the fun for the player. After being betrayed by Bronte and having to escape the police by using a trolley, the game drops the need to reload, letting the player focus on shooting the police and the spectacle of the mission. The slow pace of the story and gameplay allows the game to build up to some truly amazing moments. The gang walking up to the Braithwaite Manor is shot like something out of a film. The final confrontation with Dutch as Arthur is one of my favourite moments in gaming. My personal favourite mission is the hot air balloon one. Meeting with Sadie to figure out how to break John out of prison, she arranges for you to go up in a hot air balloon to get a closer look at the island John's being held on, finishing with her being chased by O'Driscolls and having to help her from the balloon. Going up in the balloon is one of the few times you'll see the map from a distance. It makes me wish that the hot air balloons were a part of the side content in this game, letting you see parts of the map from high up. The writing here is quite funny.
Why, a delicate flower like Mrs. Adler? Heavens above! Or below.
Like when you get seen from the guards and have to slowly ascend away. And our pilot? Hang on. Our aeronaut. Our aeronaut, Arturo Bullard, is strangely likeable. He even starts to support you when you kill people.
You showed him, Mr. Morgan!
And you get some great kill cams with him just chilling in the background. If you don't like him, however, he does get shot, so you have that going for you. The music is excellent. Saving Sadie and then crash landing, the music starts off tense, but gets more distorted as the situation becomes more dire as they crash. The composer for this game knew what they were doing, and the mission ends with a shootout amongst your crashed balloon. The set pieces throughout the game are very well done. Evidently, I'm a fan of the hot air balloon, but throughout the game, the set pieces steadily get better, starting with extended Deadeye sections to a full-on Gatling gun. I am a sucker for a character setting up a big gun and then destroying everything that's in front of them, and I do mean destroy. While the set pieces would be cool on their own, the characters and progression of the story elevates them due to your emotional connection with what's happening. Arthur's line and roar always gets me hyped to shoot some Pinkertons.
I killed your friend! It's really starting to irritate me.
If, however, you're someone who doesn't care about the story in games, these moments will be enjoyable, but getting to them will be a slog. I don't mind when a game slows down to expand on the story or setting, but with games like this, with lots of walking and talking, it can't be skipped, so you just have to sit there and push through it. Games with good writing can get away with this because you can enjoy the dialogue and performance, but with no way to skip it, it will definitely turn away players that want games just to be about gameplay. You can skip cutscenes, but with multiple sections of active gameplay that can't be skipped, you just need to sit there and go through it. There are times when the game does this well, like when taking a short walk in a pretty town, you have to slowly walk through roads. The characters will go over how they've screwed over the Greys and Braithwaites, and the music builds tension, compounded by the fact that the NPCs watch the group as you walk, increasing the feeling of unease, until finally... The mission structure of the game suffers from the usual issues that Rockstar games have, meeting a character in a location and then heading off to a different location where the mission actually takes place. Yeah, normally you get some good dialogue while travelling, but it can get annoying after a while. Travelling, in general, suffers from the usual Rockstar issues. I don't know why they cling to the run and sprint mechanics they've had since the PS2. You can turn it off in the settings, so the sprint is a toggle, but that only works for making Arthur run. You still need to spam the X button for your horse. It does give you the finger strength of SpongeBob, but can we not move on from this? You do get the choice of putting it in cinematic mode, letting you set your horse's speed, and then all you have to do is hold down the X button and it'll keep that speed. Doing this allows you to admire the gorgeous world Rockstar has painstakingly made, if you weren't too busy looking at your phone whenever you did this. The pathfinding isn't too bad. I definitely expected it to be worse. It did get a bit confused at times, but usually it wasn't too bad. It does make Arthur a bit of a dickhead though, as while getting this footage, I was on my phone and missed that this guy was bit by a snake, needing help, and Arthur just rode past him, and later that same ride, a tree fell on someone, and instead of helping them take the tree off the guy, Arthur just jumps over the tree and carries on. The pathfinding in this game is pretty good. When riding with most characters, you don't have to worry about them bugging out or getting lost, except for one time when Dutch tried to take on a stagecoach.
Or seen anybody. Hello. So either we're in this together.
I rarely experience bugs during my playthroughs. That's not to say I didn't have any. I got stuck in a box, a sheep got stuck, my horse got stuck in a carriage, and my personal favourite, I don't know whether this is a bug or not, but at certain points in the story, there are areas where you can't commit crimes. The game does this by not letting the player use their weapons or start fights with people, but also disables the wanted system, so if you accidentally knock into someone, you don't insta-fail. This lets you do this to people, and there's nothing they can do about it.
Sorry about that.
I've been quite critical of the gameplay, and while I think my criticisms are fair, they never stopped me from wanting to play the game. They did frustrate and annoy me at times, but I never wanted to put down the controller because of them. Arthur still feels like a real person, even with these issues when controlling him. Talking of Arthur... Arthur is the first of Dutch's sons, not in the sense that Dutch sired them, but he did raise them, instilling his own philosophy into Arthur and John. Having lost his mother at an early age, and seeing his father hanged for theft, He was found by Dutch and Hosea at the age of 15, being one of the first members of the Vandaling gang, where the pair taught him how to read, ride, fight, and shoot. Arthur began to see the pair as father figures, but according to his diary, loved Hosea more because of his attitude to life and is more human, while seeing Dutch as something else. This diary, by the way, works for two reasons. It allows players to refresh on what's happened in the story if you've been away from the game for a while, but also gives the player a window into how Arthur sees the events that happened during the game. There's a lot of history between Arthur and the two men, leading to Arthur being incredibly loyal to Dutch and the gang. He believes in the idea and vision that Dutch has reinforced throughout his life, and because of this, he justifies his bad actions by thinking that he and the gang are different to other outlaws due to their moral code they live by. Finding a newspaper clipping by Arthur's bed, it talks about a heist that they committed early in the gang's life and went on to donate their stolen goods to an orphanage. Clearly a type of Robin Hood scenario of them taking from the rich to give to the poor. Because of these actions, it's allowed Dutch to have both the loyalty and obedience of Arthur, becoming the camp's muscle and main enforcer. This has given Arthur a reputation of being unintelligent because of his size and fighting ability, but this is unfounded as he regularly references works of art.
Oh, you got some inbred retelling of Romeo and Juliet.
Names a horse after Boudica, an ancient English woman who led a revolt against the Romans in the 1st century, and can clearly think under pressure. He's also very witty and funny.
How much you cost, anyway?
Well, ain't that a nice way to talk to a lady?
Oh, I didn't know I was talking to a lady.
But is self-conscious as well, seen in the mission.
Why ain't you never married?
Or when you have Arthur face a mirror, you can have Arthur talk to himself.
You ugly bastard. You're getting old. Old and kinda sad.
One thing that is true about Arthur though is his loyalty. Up until chapter 6, all his actions in the game are done to help the gang and Dutch, even when he personally disagrees with the action. In the mission, Blessed Are the Meek, Dutch asks Arthur to save Micah from being hanged, and while he does object to helping him, he does nevertheless relent and head off to Strawberry. After freeing Micah, instead of immediately getting out of town, he helps Micah fight through the town to get his guns, showing what type of person he really is.
Hello, Maddie.
As Arthur knows that's what Dutch would want him to do, he helps collect debts for Herr Strauss, an action he struggles with due to the fact that he's now hurting the people he and the gang once helped. If you have low honour, Arthur will speak about how Dutch ringed him out once for robbing someone that didn't deserve it in Dutch's philosophy.
I remember one time, years ago, he let fly at me for robbing this house, saying that man was too poor. How taken from him was no different from the system we was fighting against.
Now they're actively targeting people who struggle to make ends meet. I love the performance in this scene, with Arthur forcing the words out of his mouth.
Like I said, we ain't nobody's idea of charity. Get us the money.
While he and Micah do bad things, it's the reason they do it that shows the fundamental difference between the two men. Arthur does bad things because of his code and his belief that doing whatever bad deed will ultimately help the gang, while Micah does bad things because he personally enjoys it. It's this loyalty that has caused some of Arthur's biggest tragedies. Throughout the game, you can meet up with Mary Linton, his ex-fiancée, who will ask Arthur for help. It's evident that Arthur still has strong feelings for her and is conflicted about helping her after she left him because her father disapproved of Arthur and his life. However, at some point, they had an opportunity to abandon their respective families and run away together, but Arthur refused to do this due to his loyalty to the gang. This happens again when he meets a woman who he impregnates and they have a son called Isaac. Remaining loyal to the gang, he doesn't stay with them, instead visiting every few months. Tragically, during one of his visits, he finds two graves outside their house, the mother and son both killed by robbers over $10. Both of these could have had happier endings if Arthur had decided that there is more to be loyal to than just the gang and its leader, a lesson he's able to teach John before it's too late. In the early stages of the game, there's some animosity between Arthur and John, as John abandoned the gang for a year after he got Abigail pregnant and didn't want to believe he's the father, only to be welcomed with open arms by Dutch when he returned. It goes deeper though, as Arthur is envious of John for what he has, a chance at a better life with Abigail and Jack, and from Arthur no longer being the favourite.
I was the prize pony once. Now I'm the workhorse.
Due to Arthur's abilities, he's seen as the go-to for most gang members, resulting in Arthur being involved in a lot of the gang's activities, leading to a large bounty being put on his head. This can be seen from the very start of the game, as you start off on the run, and it gets worse and worse throughout the game, with the gang, but more specifically Dutch, creating new enemies and holding on to old grudges that cause more pressure to build on the gang until it eventually cracks. 2 times during the game does Arthur have the choice to give up Dutch to the Pinkertons in exchange for his own freedom. Once by himself when Agent Milton confronts him while fishing, killing, and again with the whole gang, letting the rest go free if they betray Dutch. These decisions aren't up to the player. Arthur, then the gang, will refuse the agent completely, but I wonder what the decision would have been if it had been given later on in the game. Arthur's arc in this game is becoming disillusioned with Dutch as he strays further and further from his teachings. Arthur sees Dutch change from a man who puts the gang first to someone who puts themselves first, giving in to their impulses with no thought of the consequences. It's not until chapter 5 that really shows Arthur how far Dutch has fallen, lying directly to him to try to justify a brutal murder.
What are you doing? Jesus. Easy, Dutch. What was that?
Horrible old crone.
But you killed her.
She was gonna betray us, Arthur. Couldn't you tell?
No.
Well, I got some Spanish. She was.
So how did you know she was gonna betray us? What'd she say?
It was in her eyes, in the way she was leading us.
But you said you knew Spanish.
I know human beings, Arthur.
But even with the signs there for Arthur, he refuses to see them as Dutch is his father, the man that taught Arthur how to see the world. It's not until everyone's most dreaded part in a second playthrough does Arthur begin to see Dutch more clearly. It really shows how backwards this time is, as the Doctor demands money before he helps Arthur. Good thing modern day America isn't like that. One of the main themes of the game is the inevitability of change. The Wild West is becoming a land of civilization, a land of laws, and the time of outlaws and gunslingers is at an end. That's the first thing the game tells the player with the opening text. Arthur comes to accept two inevitabilities as the game goes on. He comes to understand that this is it for the gang. The times are changing for people like them, and maybe they should move on. He's one of the few members to understand and recognize this before it's too late.
Feels like things have changed. The whole world's changed. But they don't want folk like us no more.
The other inevitability he accepts is his own death. Rather than fight to keep himself alive and the gang going, he begins to fight to keep the people he cares about safe and looked after. His bitterness towards John is forgotten, and instead, he works to keep John and his family safe. He rescues John from a federal prison against Dutch's orders, and then saves Abigail from Agent Milton when Dutch refuses to help her. Depending on the player, he will also help other people. The more observant of you watching will have noticed that Arthur's appearance keeps changing quite dramatically throughout the video, and that's because the footage is from both my playthroughs of the game. The game gives you two play styles, a high honor and a low honor run. You can tell whether the footage is from my first playthrough, the high honor run, as I tried to make Arthur look more stylish and better groomed, while during my second playthrough, my low honor run, I had more fun with Arthur's appearance. If, however, you're ever confused on which playthrough you're seeing, you can tell by this evil mustache for an evil Arthur. The honor in this game is not complicated, unlike other games, which will make you think about which decision is best, and ultimately make you feel bad no matter what you choose. The choices here can be boiled down to whether or not you want to be a dick. I'd be surprised to hear someone complain about the game for what it counts as an honourable or dishonourable action. The first time I played this game, I was a bit disappointed by the morality and choices the game gives you. It's not very deep and doesn't open much discussion as to which is the right choice, something that other games that came out years before had done much better. But when playing through for a second time, a line that Dutch gives in the first chapter perfectly sums up the morality for this game.
I got a saying, my friend. We shoot fellas as need shooting, save fellas as need saving, and feed them as need feeding.
And that's because it perfectly shows how Arthur will see a situation and how to act honourably. It's why there's no impact to Arthur's honour when he kills hordes of police officers or murders racists, which you can kill without consequence, but I suggest leaving them to their own devices.
Do you want this rally to happen or not? Why does this always happen to me?
It makes sense that the main character's father figure will give him his sense of morals. I'm going to go into Dutch's character later, but to boil it down, he doesn't act how he preaches, but Arthur and John absorb how he talks about the world and how to act right and wrong in it. The simplified morality of this game is incorporated into the story really well. Depending on how you play, Arthur will reflect that playstyle. Being nice and helping people will increase your honour, which will make Arthur nicer and more caring, whereas if you're killing and robbing people, it will decrease your honour and Arthur will be more self-centered and bloodthirsty. A good example of this is in Sean's death, with high honour Arthur reminiscing about Sean, while low honour Arthur is more upset that they still haven't found any gold.
He was like an annoying little brother to me. What fun we had riding together. What a goddamn mess we are making of things. Sean has been killed. His head shot half off in an ambush. Still no Confederate gold, but a shitload of trouble.
This extends to Arthur's redemption at the end of the game. Both high and low honour Arthur will have a similar character arc throughout the game, with Arthur becoming disenchanted with Dutch and wanting to help John, but the real difference is whether Arthur redeems himself. Red Dead 2 isn't alone in making the way you play the game decide how the game unfolds. Both the Metro series and Dishonored games change the ending depending on how many people you kill and what choices you make throughout, but those games have much less character work for the player character, while Red Dead 2 has a fully written character to play as that will change in cutscenes depending on what the player has him do in the gameplay. I do prefer this to games that only focus on what decisions you make that impact the story, as usually it only depends on a few select choices that make the difference and completely ignore how you play the game. The Witcher 3 has loads of decisions throughout the story, but only these 4 late game decisions, 5 depending on if you choose to see the Emperor or not, will decide what ending you get, with some slight differences depending on what smaller choices you made. How you play the game has no impact on the story. Charge the peasants who can't afford a haircut as much as possible, then rob them for all they have. No problem, you can still have the happy ending. Most of the choices you make in Red Dead 2 are very surface level, as I've already spoken about, but during the final chapter of the game, the player is given the choice to help Arthur's friends before he dies. Starting with Sadie Adler, you meet her in chapter 1 after the O'Driscolls have made her a widow. She spends the next few chapters mourning her husband, but we do get to see her capabilities as she fights off the Lemoyne Raiders and see her hatred for the O'Driscolls as she refuses to return to the house, instead taking the fight to them.
Why didn't you get inside?
And miss all this?
It's not until the final chapter, though, that she really enters the story. After the failed bank robbery in Saint Denis, with most of the gang leaders either dead or lost at sea, she and Charles takes charge of the gang, moving camp and leaving clues for the missing members. She's then determined to end the O'Driscolls, hunting down their camps and attacks them every chance she gets, even ensuring that Colm swings. Still not satisfied, she'll ask Arthur to hunt down the final O'Driscolls with her, giving the player the choice. Agreeing to go with her, you're rewarded with a large amount of honour and Sadie opening up to you.
They turned me into a monster, Arthur. But my memories of him, they still pure.
Next, we have Charles Smith. He's a very moral character, pushing Arthur to do the right thing and believing that Arthur is a good person. While moving camp, you stumble on a family of Germans who ask for your help as their father has been taken. Arthur initially doesn't want to help, but Charles admonishes him for this.
Ain't no business of ours. I don't even speak their language.
You ain't as tough and dense as all that.
During the final chapter, after making such a mess of their other plans, Dutch wants to cause a distraction for the government, letting the gang escape in the confusion. His search for a distraction comes to an end after meeting Eagleflies, an angry young Native American whose tribe, as I'm sure will be a shock to you, hasn't been treated well by the US government. Arthur is able to see how Dutch is able to manipulate a young angry man for his own needs, similar to how Dutch once manipulated Arthur to do his bidding. Dutch uses the anger of the Native Americans to start a war, one he knows they can't win, to give himself a distraction to escape the law. Charles, being half Native American himself, helps the tribe and tries to stop the son from starting a war he can't win. He'll ask Arthur to meet with Rains Fall, and the player has the decision to help or not. Choosing to help will result in a large amount of honour, and he can help the chief by retrieving some important items that the army stole, and he helps Arthur by collecting some herbs that will help with Arthur's cough. If you complete the mission as Rains Fall asks, without killing anyone, you'll be given an owl feather trinket, which boosts all your stats a small amount. These decisions are the game asking the player whether or not Arthur is going to redeem himself. A potential problem with doing the honour on a sliding scale like this means that the game could lock the player to a certain playstyle early on in the game. Say you want to start off as an outlaw, robbing and killing as you please, but then, as the story goes on and you want to be better to redeem Arthur, but can't as you've already made Arthur too dishonourable, the game stops this by having a cap on both sides of the honour scale, not allowing you to max out either honour or dishonour until chapter 6. And during chapter 6, when story-wise Arthur is most concerned about his honour and legacy, honour has a 1.5 multiplier, letting someone be able to change Arthur late on in the game. You can also just walk around Saint Denis, greeting people in order to up your honour. Helping Sadie and Charles up my honour so much, I had to go on a killing spree to keep my dishonourable playthrough dishonourable. The game heavily pushes you towards wanting to be honourable by the end of the game. Obviously, these decisions give you a lot of honour, but throughout the story, Arthur and the player are shown that honourable and kind acts will be rewarded. Helping the Germans results in both Arthur being given a bar of gold, but also gives the gang a better place to set up camp. Then, later in the game, the Germans help Arthur after he passes out from his TB, Outside the main missions, some of the side quests also help Arthur redeem himself. After your first mission in Saint Denis, the game starts you in a certain location, and just down the street is a new stranger mission. The game is very heavily pushing you to complete this mission. You meet with Brother Dawkins, who asks you to check out a shop he believes is dealing in human trafficking. Once you free the slaves and take them back to Brother Dawkins, you'll find him later on with Sister Caldron teaching children to read. One of them will steal her crucifix, and you have to chase him down. Returning the crucifix to the nun, you'll unlock a final mission with her. In Chapter 6, after Arthur has been diagnosed, you'll find her in Saint Denis collecting donations for the poor. The pair will talk about how they've lived dishonest lives, with Arthur worried that at his core he's a bad person, but is told that people aren't that simple. She then tells Arthur to start with doing a good act, and eventually his heart will follow, basically telling the player that now's the time to get the honor level up. After the cutscene, you have to give her a donation, and that completes her quest line. All of these missions are optional. None of them are vital to completing the story, but they're well designed to where most players will complete them. First, they're all located in Saint Denis, the city in the game that has a lot of story missions in it, so you'll have to pass these side quests while on the way to other objectives. Second, they're short and easy. None of them took me longer than 10 minutes. And depending on if you've completed these 3 missions, the main story will slightly change, as Arthur will either run into Sister Caldron if you completed the missions and have high honour, or you'll meet with Reverend Swanson. Both serve the same purpose, with them telling Arthur to do what he knows he should with the time he has remaining. If you have high honour, the Reverend will focus on telling Arthur to help those he cares about, whereas if you have low honour, he'll instead focus on telling Arthur to keep fighting. They both work fine in the story, but the best option for this cutscene is to meet with the sister. Starting off with him revealing that he's dying, he bares his soul to her, describing how he's lived a bad life that's been filled with pain, and we get the best moment in the game.
I guess I'm afraid.
There is nothing to be afraid of, Mr. Morgan. Take a gamble that love exists and do a loving act.
Never in a Western, and rarely in larger fiction, does the tough main character admit he's afraid of dying and what will happen to the people he cares about after he's gone. Roger Clark smashed this performance. This is not the only way in which Arthur can redeem himself in the side quests. Early on in the game, you'll help Strauss reclaim some debts. Starts off fine, chasing and beating to get your money, until you have to deal with a Polish man who doesn't speak English, resulting in you having to beat him and steal his wedding ring to settle his debt. Returning to Strauss, he'll send you off to a final debtor, one Thomas Downs, a man Arthur is familiar with as he stopped Arthur from killing someone during a bar fight. Arriving at the farm, he'll say he can't repay the debt, so Arthur beats him and leaves him bleeding, demanding the money. Returning later in the game, you'll find out that the husband is dead and the wife, Edith Downs, has sold the farm to repay the debt. After that, you only see Edith once more in the main story, briefly in Ansberg, but the consequence for beating Thomas comes full force later in the game, as every player knows as Arthur coughs more and more until he goes to see the doctor.
It's not good news.
Completing the crucifix mission, after picking up the crucifix, you run into Edith Dowds, having fallen on hard times and having to sell her body. It's interesting that the game reminds you of your past sins during this mission of you helping someone, reminding you that not only does Arthur need to do good, but he also must make up for past wrongs. It does it again when Arthur falls off his horse and has to be taken to the doctor, as the man that helps you looks a lot like Thomas Downs. Only by having Arthur act more selfless and caring, gaining a high honour, do the final missions for Edith Dowds unlock. It never occurs to a more selfish Arthur to help the people he's wronged, meaning that low honour Arthur is never able to truly redeem himself, while high honour Arthur has become more caring, so he goes out of his way to help the family, saving the son from minors. That's people who dig in the ground, not children, because Arthur beating a child probably wouldn't be very honourable.
You're a sad little thing, ain't you?
And you save Edith from a creep, giving them enough money to get out of poverty. By helping the family, they actually turn their lives around, as you can see the boarding a ship in the credits, looking a lot better off if you've helped them during the game, and can find a newspaper article discussing a new golf course Edith has opened and how well it's doing. It circles back to what Sister Caldron said: by doing a kind act, his heart will follow. By not having a high enough honour, or not doing the missions, the Downs don't appear in the credits, and are, presumably, still trapped in poverty and prostitution. Later me, you can still see them in the credits even if you don't help them, which is so stupid. Isn't the whole point of this is to make up for Arthur's sins? If they can escape this life without Arthur, then it takes away all his agency when going back to help them. This isn't the only time that Arthur has an opportunity to make up for what he did to the Downs. After reclaiming the Downs debt, you can continue to do them for Strauss as a side quest. Most of these aren't as morally questionable, with you assisting the people you can't pay back the loan by helping them hunt a rare cougar, or keeping people out of a cemetery while they go grave robbing. It's not until the final 2 missions that the morals begin to creep back in. The second to last mission has Arthur tracking down a deserter from the US Army. Finding him, he'll be trying to fix his wagon, and while trying to get the debt, you're attacked by the army. The pair is able to fend them off, but a lantern on the wagon is shot and it burns down, losing their supplies and your payment. The game then gives us a nice rug pull as the deserter's wife comes out of hiding, revealing her to be pregnant. This explains why he wanted the money and deserted the army. Arthur realizes that he should have helped with the wagon and has the choice to reclaim what little they have left or absolve the debt. Strauss then sends you to find a miner who you find has died, so off you go to the wife to reclaim the debt, finding a recently made widow and a young child. A familiar scene to Arthur. This is where we see how much Arthur has changed, as the game doesn't give the same choice as before, instead only asking whether to absolve the debt or absolve and give her money. Even dishonourable Arthur will give you this choice, realising that with the small amount of time he has left, it's not worth ruining these people's lives for money, showing that Arthur has truly changed. This is then proven as following this, Arthur kicks Strauss out the camp. Regardless of whether the player wants Arthur to redeem himself or not, he will attempt to, even if he doesn't do any of what I've just spoken about and doesn't help Charles or Sadie, he will try to help John. Seeing that Dutch has changed, killing due to impulse and anger, and backed up by Dutch relying on Micah more and more, seeing him as his right-hand man, he starts pushing Arthur aside as he suspects Arthur isn't as loyal as he once was. This is shown as he begins to make plans with Micah.
And Micah, we need to talk. Figure out some things.
That is very concerning. Arthur begins to plan with John and escape from Dutch, first having to figure out where he keeps the money. It's these interactions that show the difference between high and low honour Arthur, with low honour Arthur being more bitter about the whole situation, while high honour Arthur is more compassionate, wanting John to make it out with his family.
I feel like you should take your woman and child and get lost.
Do you?
What reason you got to stick around at this point? It's done. I don't see no way out of any of this.
What about loyalty?
That's long been broken. I feel like you should take your woman and child and get lost.
Do you?
You could give something to Jack. It's that or... Well, I don't see no way out of this.
What about loyalty?
Be loyal to what matters.
Dutch's manipulation of eagle flies comes to a head when he arrives at the camp, asking for help on an attack on an oil refinery. Rain falls arrives to try to talk them out of it, revealing to Dutch that Arthur has been working behind his back. The young mob rides off to start the attack, and the gang follows. Fighting through the oil field, you follow Dutch into the refinery, letting him steal bombs, showing that he didn't want to help the Native Americans survive this attack, only wanting to help himself. On the way out, Arthur is blinded by a burst pipe, and Dutch just walks away, leaving Arthur to die. You're only saved by eagle flies, who get shot afterwards. Of course, Dutch denies it, but Arthur knows what happens and has completely lost all faith in Dutch and his plan to escape the law. Arthur previously let gang members escape, such as Trelawney or Swanson, but seeing that the Pinkertons won't let Dutch escape, they'll end with the gang completely destroyed. He starts to actively advocate for them to be let free of Dutch's rule. This is where Arthur directly goes against Dutch.
You know, the women and the children. And John and his family. I'm afraid I have to insist. I mean, we gotta let them go, because if the Pinkertons come through again, they will kill everyone.
John? Insist?
Dutch sees that Arthur is no longer his to control, someone who will question his leadership and demand things from him. This is not a man that Dutch likes, and in Dutch's broken mind, he views this as a betrayal from Arthur. Arthur is obviously disenchanted with Dutch, but he never loses his loyalty to him. While saving Abigail from Milton, he reveals that Micah is a rat.
Micah Bell. We picked him up when you boys came back from the Caribbean, and he's been a good boy ever since.
Now, Arthur could leave Dutch in the dark about this, letting Micah eventually betray him, but instead he warns Dutch. This lands on deaf ears though, as Dutch believes Arthur to have betrayed him. This standoff is interrupted by the Pinkertons, forcing Arthur and John to escape through the caves, and the game gives you one last decision: help John escape and make it back to his family, or go back to confront Dutch and Micah. I know it says go back for the money, but this is clearly more about going after the pair.
Dutch. Micah. Come and get me, you bastard.
The game is asking you, the player, what's more important, helping John or taking revenge on Micah. There are 4 endings for Arthur, depending on your honour level and what decision you make here. I love the difference in music depending on your decision. Going after Dutch and Micah is more angry and dark, while helping John is more optimistic.
Dutch. Micah. Come and get me, you bastard. Dutch! I'm coming with you. I'm gonna get you out of this bullshit if it's the last goddamn thing I do.
Thank you.
Oh, shit!
Starting with going back for the money, Arthur will fight through the Pinkertons to get back to the camp, now destroyed in a flame, symbolising the end of the Van der Linde gang. Finding the money, when leaving the cave, Micah will attack you, stabbing you in the back and starting your final fight. Side note, I like the small detail of Arthur's wallet increasing when you get the money, and then losing it all when Micah tackles you. Oh, nope, sorry, wrong direction. Having high honour means that Arthur is able to do more damage to Micah, slicing his face and stopping him from stabbing Arthur. The game also lets Arthur have a better ending with high honour, letting him die peacefully with the sun coming through the trees. Low honour Arthur, however, isn't so lucky, being stabbed by Micah during the fight and then being killed as he tries to crawl away.
It's been a lot of fun.
That is an awful ending for Arthur. Choosing to go back for the money, Arthur will use his last moments to try to convince Dutch that Micah is a rat, your honour level dictating how desperate Arthur is in his attempt to convince Dutch.
You're the rat, Micah. I'm Molly, Dutch. Him. Ah! You're the rat. Not Molly, Dutch. It's him. Him. Kill him. Not Molly. Now, Miss Grimshaw. Not even cold.
If, however, you choose to help John, you'll continue to climb up the mountain, fighting off the Pinkertons until Arthur accepts that they both won't make it, giving John his hat and saying his goodbye. You then hold your ground, letting John escape to his family, until suddenly Micah tackles you and the pair fight. This is where I think Arthur truly gains his redemption, sacrificing himself to give John a chance to live the life he never could. I know Arthur didn't exactly have long, but he could have kept going with John to die in a more comfortable place, surrounded by people he cared for. By ensuring that John survived, Arthur is happy in the knowledge that his brother made it, so there's not much difference between Arthur's dialogue if he's high or low honour. He'll tell Dutch that Micah is a rat again, but is happy that John survived, that he won against Micah. Like going back for the money, low honour Arthur will get brutally put down by Micah.
Damn you. Damn us both!
But in the true ending for Arthur, Arthur will crawl to a rock and watch the sunrise for a final time, just as he wanted so long ago when talking amongst friends.
What about you, Arthur?
Me? I don't care about that nonsense.
Come on.
Face me to the west so I can watch the setting sun and remember all the fine times we had that way.
See, Tilly? I told you Arthur had a soul.
Arthur is clearly an incredible character. It's no wonder why so many people say he's their favourite. While his arc is really well done, I like that it's the player that has to make him redeem himself by helping those around him. It's a choice that the player must actively make for Arthur to deserve his true ending. Both games have the central theme of redemption, but the main difference is the type of redemption. The first game has redemption in the eyes of the law. John doesn't change as a person, as he's already redeemed himself morally by becoming a rancher and giving up his gunslinging ways before the game starts. The second game deals with moral redemption, with Arthur actively trying to change to become a better man with the time he has left. I think the honour system in this game is one of the most interesting parts of the gameplay and story, as it has a real effect on the character of Arthur. Yeah, it doesn't change what happens to him, he'll still die at the end, but it does change how he acts and how both the other characters see him, and how the player sees him. The game pushes a philosophy of karma. There's no reason why Micah wouldn't kill Arthur when he's more honourable. He clearly takes pleasure in it when Arthur is dishonourable. So why does he leave Arthur when he's honourable? The only answer I can see is karma. Arthur doing good actions leads to good results.
Just as evil begat evil your whole life long, so good may beget good.
It does beg the question though, which playstyle is better? I would say the dishonourable playthrough is more fun. Having already played the game, I knew what I enjoyed about the game, so could focus on the parts I liked, and just robbing and shooting is always enjoyable, but it does mean you have to see Micah do this, which pisses me off. The honourable playthrough definitely means you get a better story with a much more interesting character as he changes and succeeds, but it does mean helping NPCs, which can get quite boring at times. I would suggest for anyone who hasn't played the game to do an honourable run as your first playthrough and then a dishonourable run as your second playthrough. Do a second playthrough of the game though. It cuts out a lot of the boring parts and streamlines the experience to just the parts you already know you enjoy. Arthur's story ends with John escaping, with the hope that John will be able to live the life Arthur never could. So, does he? Having John not be the main character was definitely a risky gamble for Rockstar. I'm sure there were people that are pissed off that Red Dead 2 wouldn't let you play as John, instead making you play as some other cowboy that would never be as good as John. Good night, sweet prince. I will say though that this gamble paid off, and what's more impressive is that John isn't forgotten or misused. He's got his own character arc, which admittedly isn't as strong as Arthur's, because of course it won't be as you spend most of your time with Arthur. As I've already mentioned, John at the start of the game isn't the man he is in Red Dead 1, but as the game goes on, he becomes more confident, planning his own train heist with a clever solution to stop the train. He begins to take on a more fatherly role in Jack's life after he's kidnapped by the Braithwaites. This all comes together at the end of the game where Arthur teaches John what's important in this life. He then begins to plan his escape with Abigail, but unfortunately because of this, and because of Arthur insisting that Dutch let John's family go, this puts John directly in Dutch's crosshair. John is very similar to Arthur in terms of upbringing. He was found at an early age by Dutch, who raised him to see the world as Dutch does, becoming Dutch's second son, and in Arthur's eyes, favourite. The big difference between the two though is that John has a family, while Arthur lost his chance to have one. This then splits John's loyalty, something Dutch is not a fan of as we know by now, and as he becomes more paranoid in the game, he believes John is turning against him. John is also one of the first characters to really see what's happening to Dutch, calling him out earlier than most other characters. He's the only person who openly objects to Dutch's murder of Angelo Bronte.
Part of your philosophy books cover feeding a fella. Good goddamn alligator, Dutch. The part that covers weakness.
Because of this, Dutch is happy to let John get arrested when they try to rob the Saint Denis bank, as John admits later to Arthur.
I feel like in Saint Denis, when I got arrested, maybe he could have done something.
Meaning that while Dutch won't actively kill John or Arthur, he won't help or save them when the time comes, able to justify to himself that there was nothing he could do for them. This is seen after Arthur and Sadie save John from prison and the hangman, but upon their arrival to camp, Dutch is immediately angry that they saved him, saying that it'll bring too much attention, but is all too happy to do whatever if he believes it will personally benefit him, so clearly just wanted John gone. This is most apparent during the final train heist, where John gets shot off the train and Dutch heads back to check on him, returning saying that John's dead. Now, as this is a prequel, you already know John's alive, confirmed when he arrives at camp when Arthur confronts Dutch. We don't see what happened when Dutch rode back for John, but my guess is that Dutch saw John shot and didn't believe he would survive, so left him behind, letting nature take its course with no one the wiser. What he didn't account for was John walking however far to confront him, helping Arthur fight off the Pinkertons. Regardless of the player's final choice, Arthur will give John his hat and tell him to go to his family, and that's the last we see of John for 8 years. After Arthur's death, the game cuts to the epilogue, with John, under the name Jim Milton, and his family trying and failing to live an honest life, having to move again after John killed a man, unable to shake his outlaw upbringing. The epilogue is split in two. The first part is set on the Pronghorn Ranch, with John working as a ranch hand, helping putting up fences and delivering foal. On the surface, this is where John learns to ranch, but this part of the game deals with John's identity. Trying to become someone he's not, he continuously falls back into old habits, fighting people who are harassing the ranch when he first arrives, and defending it when they return.
Imagine you're frustrated with your lot in life, married to a shit-shoveling farmhand.
How are you shit-talking me after the beating I just gave you? The last straw for Abigail, who's seen firsthand what this lifestyle leads to, is John using his skills to retaliate against another ranch after they attack Pronghorn and steal their cattle, as she disappears the next day, taking Jack with her, worried that John won't be able to change and will end up as the others have. However, by returning the cattle, and by working hard to learn the craft, John gets into the good books of the owner, and is able to use this connection to get a loan from the bank to buy his own ranch, in the hopes of proving to Abigail that he's changed. This is where John learns that his skills aren't something he should hide from the world, but if used correctly, can benefit himself and his family, proven in the second part of the epilogue. The first part ends with John getting his iconic outfit from the first game and getting the loan, becoming something we can only dream of.
You will be a homeowner.
Immediately after leaving the bank with the loan, you run into Uncle. At first, this may seem like a bad thing, but he does help John in setting up the ranch.
Oh, you don't build a barn, dumbass. What do you think this is, 1785?
Having bought the property in a new infestation, part 2 starts. This is where he truly combines John and Jim, using the skills learnt on the ranch as Jim and the gunslinging he learnt as John. He builds his ranch with the help of Uncle and Charles, who you find bare-knuckle boxing in Saint Denis. I love the montage of the three of them building the ranch house. The music, the slight interaction, Uncle just sitting in the background. The epilogue has quite a few montages, mostly of John doing work. They really show how hard John is trying to put his past behind him, no longer wanting to be an outlaw, but a family man now. Sadly, the original actor for Uncle, John O'Cray, died during the production of Red Dead Redemption 2 and was replaced by James McBride, but in his honour, a location on the map was named after him, and they kept his voiceover for the scenes of Uncle singing, which we hear when the three of them get wasted.
Young miss at dancing school is taught the minuet to tread.
After completing the ranch, with a very familiar farmhouse, John writes to Abigail, telling her of the new ranch and whatnot. I'm not entirely sure where he sends the letter, but nevertheless, she and their son arrive shortly afterwards. John begins to complete his arc as he truly becomes a family man here, taking Jack out fishing and helping their dog when he gets bitten by a snake. But he finishes his arc in the mission, A New Family Imagined. Taking Abigail into Blackwater, you visit a few different places, getting a photo taken together and watching a show, but the end of the mission has you rowing into the middle of the lake.
Will you marry me?
So yeah, John's happy, he's got a nice ranch and successfully reconnected with his family. Overall, he's doing quite well. Only problem is, because they suck, banks expect their loans to be repaid. This is where Sadie Adler comes in. Having tracked John down, she asks for his help as she's become a bounty hunter and needs help bringing in a few of them. You do quite a few bounties with her, helping pay his debt to the bank. This is what I mean about John using his gunslinging talents to help his family. This type of work pays John enough to keep him afloat while his ranch isn't producing any income, and is legal, so he'll stay on the right side of the law. This should leave John a happy man. He's got a plot of land, some money coming in, and got his family back. He just has one last problem to take care of: Micah. The final mission has Sadie telling him she has a lead on Micah, and whilst it upsets Abigail, he chooses to go with her to hunt him down in honour of Arthur and the others who died because of Micah. Heading to Strawberry, they find one of Micah's old associates, who gives up his location in exchange for his life. Whoops. Heading into the mountains, there's a nice circularity to the game as it starts and finishes in the snow-capped mountains. Fighting our way up, the trio is slowly picked off, with Charles getting shot by a sniper and Sadie getting stabbed, leaving only John, and the music goes off.
It's John Marston, Micah!
I can't really state it enough, but the music in this game is incredible. The opening music perfectly sets the tone. Saving Sadie and taking her back to the camp. Riding to the camp one last time to confront Dutch as Arthur, giving the player time to think about everything that's happened and what's probably going to happen.
That's the way it is.
And finally, John fighting to get to Micah, killing everyone in your way. The music during the epilogue also reinforces the progress of John becoming the man we know from the first game. Up until the epilogue, all the music is original to the game, but when playing as John, some of the music from the first game appears. This is most evident during the Jim Milton Rides Again mission, as John not only recreates the cover from the first game, but afterwards, the main theme from the first game starts to play. The music for American Venom, the final mission, is a remix of a few different tracks from the first game. The inclusion of these tracks symbolises John's change into the man we knew from the first game. Having either started his own gang or taken over one, you find Micah in this small watchtower. Pinning you down, Sadie gets the drop on him, taking him hostage, but a surprise visit from Dutch lets Micah escape her, and we enter a standoff. I'm going to talk about Dutch in a bit, so we'll discuss his role in the scene there, but eventually he shoots Micah, letting Sadie get out of the way, and you can finally fill him full of lead. And don't worry, I know exactly where to aim. Dutch walks away, leaving behind a lot of money from the Blackwater robbery they did all the way back in Chapter 1. Helping Sadie and Charles off the mountain and using the money to pay off the loan, the credits roll. John a happy man. During the credits, John and Abigail get married, Charles and Sadie recover from their injuries and leave the Marstons, Charles heading north to Canada and Sadie heading south to Mexico and beyond. We also see some of the surviving gang members and where they ended up. Mostly a happy sequence. The game also shows the Pinkertons finding the remains of Micah and his gang and track down the culprit back to Beecher's Hope. Arguably, John seeking revenge and going after Micah at the end is his biggest mistake. Doing this leads to John being tracked down, his family being abducted, and him having to go after the remaining members of the Vanderlyn gang. This feeds into one of the themes of the game, that revenge is a fool's game. Arthur throughout the game will repeat this sentiment.
Mark my words on this. Vengeance is an idiot's game.
This is then reinforced in the story as when the gang goes for revenge, it causes more issues. Killing Bronte causes people to begin questioning Dutch. The Foreman brothers kidnapping Tilly ends with most, if not all of them dead. Sadie's entire story is about this point, with her revenge on the O'Driscolls leaving her a shell of her former self. In the epilogue, she doesn't have anything to live for except bounty hunting, spending the rest of her time in a bar.
Meet me in Saloon and Valentine. I'm there most days.
The obvious argument here is that these people deserve to die, and yeah, all these people are killers whose removal probably would benefit society, but this goes against the main theme of the game, redemption. The main characters are killers, who redeem themselves. Who's to say those you kill in revenge wouldn't have redeemed themselves somewhere down the line, and those that didn't wouldn't have lasted long as the world changed, the other theme of the game. You could argue though that the game does go back on this at the end, with the final mission being a revenge mission with a very satisfying conclusion as you punish someone who's wronged you repeatedly, and you receive enough money to fix John's financial issues, arguing that revenge can be good. So after the credits roll and the game pops you back in the world with no more story, what's left? You can complete any side quests you didn't while you're Arthur. They are properly animated for John as well, and if you complete a side quest you started as Arthur, the characters will discuss him, as do some NPCs around the map. You can even track down some of the old gang members. Pearson can be found in Rhodes, running the general store. Tilly can be found in Saint Denis, married and pregnant. Mary Beth can be found in the train station in Valentine, having become a successful author. And while not a gang member, you can also find Rains Fall at the train station in Ansburg. He'll talk about Arthur and what's happened to his tribe. While heading around the map to speak to these people, you can also find the gravestones of those who didn't make it during the story. These do appear as they die, so Arthur can visit most of them, but the important one, only John can visit, with Charles having buried him. The game does have some small differences between the two player characters. The sound effect for the Deadeye changes. While both write and draw in their journal, John's drawings are a lot worse than Arthur's, and in a funny nod to the original, while Arthur can swim for a bit, John will immediately run out of stamina and die, a reference to the fact in the first game, John will die instantly if he goes into the water. The big difference between the two though is the honour system has a lot more to do with Arthur and how it changes him. It doesn't do a lot for John. Obviously, as he's a character in the first game that's set after this game, he can't be as changeable as Arthur, as the honour system in the first game doesn't affect John's character, so it'd be strange if he was changeable here but not later on. This does however mean that there's a disconnect between John's gameplay and John's cutscenes, which loses one of my favourite parts of the game, but like I said, I do understand why they did it this way. Having looked at both playable characters and how they change throughout the story, it's finally time to look at the reason they had to change. It's time to talk about... Before we start, I want to talk about an academic paper I found while researching for this video. Unsung Heroes, Reconceptualizing a Video Game as a Work of Art, that rolls off the tongue, by Jessica Hoffman Davis, a retired senior lecturer at Harvard Graduate School of Education. That might not mean a lot to you, but what if I was to tell you that this is Dutch's mother? That's right, her son is Benjamin Byron Davis, the mountain of a man that played Dutch. I've linked the paper below as her son uploaded the whole thing on Reddit. I'd recommend reading it. It's both really sweet and really interesting. Having attended a video game conference in support of her son, she saw how passionate the fans were and decided the only way to truly experience her son's performance is to play the game. She goes on to detail how she bought a PS4, explaining what a PS4 is and the game, how she struggled with the controller, taking time to get used to the control scheme. Props to her for starting with a game with an infamously bad control scheme, but slowly she got better, feeling a connection to Arthur as she had to dress him, shave him, and choose what he does. My favourite part of the paper is when she becomes a true gamer, having someone interrupt an important moment in the game game. For her, it was when Arthur was taken to the doctors in Saint Denis when a technician knocked on the door. I don't know how much worse timing you can get. I bring this whole thing up because 1, I think it's sweet that an old lady played a video game in order to see her son's performance, and 2, because this game is so good that it's making people at Harvard begrudgingly admit that video games are art. Right, back to our son. The plot of this game can be shown as a map from one of Dutch's failures to the next. The game literally starts with the gang on the run because of Dutch's mistakes. While in Blackwater, the gang had a few schemes, with Arthur and Hosea working on a real estate scam, and Dutch and Micah working on a ferry heist. Not much is known about the heist. We never see it, and Arthur wasn't there, so at best, we get second-hand accounts of the event. The gang was able to steal the money, but were quickly swarmed by the law, ending with 3 gang members killed and 1 being taken hostage. At some point, seemingly for no reason, Dutch kills a woman, and Micah apparently was involved. What we do know is that the heist created so much heat for the gang that they had to quickly pack their bags, leaving behind most of their stuff and money, with Dutch hiding the money from the heist somewhere around Blackwater and were chased into the mountains. It's a big mystery in the first chapter about what happened, with Dutch avoiding the question.
I ain't had time to ask me. What really went down back there on that boat?
We missed you. That's what happened.
A reasonable person would probably think that now's a good time to keep your head low and let the heat die down a bit. As we've already seen, Dutch is not a reasonable person. He decides the best thing to do is rob a train, invoking the wrath of Leviticus Cornwall. This pattern continues, with Dutch and the gang on the run, trying to lie low, until Dutch decides to do something that brings more attention to the gang. I don't think a single one of his grand plans actually work. He fails to find any gold from the Braithwaites and Greys, with them figuring out the gang's plan to work both sides, and it ends with another death for the gang, and Jack getting kidnapped. This brings him into contact with Angelo Bronte, who Dutch tries to use to steal from the city, but is betrayed by Bronte as he tricks Dutch to steal from the trolley station and has the police waiting for him. This cycle continues until finally, the gang falls apart. Dutch is a really interesting character. There's a lot of ambiguity about him. Later in the game, the characters begin to wonder whether Dutch changed or just became more of who he was. Dutch at the end of the game is the true Dutch, the one that earlier Dutch was able to hold back until the pressure from the times changing, and with a little help from someone, he no longer kept under control. His treatment of women he claims to love shows the man Dutch is. First, he was engaged to Miss Grimshaw, until getting tossed aside when he met a woman called Annabelle. She was then killed by Colm, but probably would have been cast aside by Dutch at some point when a younger woman caught his eye. When we start the game, he's with Molly O'Shea, who he neglects, while also hitting on Mary Beth.
There is something about you, Mary Beth.
This is all summed up in the final confrontation between Arthur and Dutch, where Grimshaw takes Arthur's side and is shot by Micah, dying painfully, and Dutch doesn't care.
Is with me!
Dutch's paranoia, which becomes so bad by the end that he refuses to let people leave the gang in fear that they will betray him, and is willing to let John be hanged because he believes he's a traitor, is there from the start. After finding out that the O'Driscolls are in the mountains with them, Dutch believes they're there to attack the gang, instead of the more reasonable explanation that they're up there for the same reason as the gang, on the run from the law. To be fair though, if the O'Driscolls knew that the Vandaling gang were in the mountains with them, they'd probably attack them. Talking about the O'Driscolls, one of the first things we learn about Dutch is his view on revenge.
You always said revenge is a luxury we can't afford.
As he plans to go back on his word as they ride out to attack the O'Driscolls, but pulls himself back, letting Colm ride off as he believes it's best for the gang to steal their heist plans and do it themselves. He does eventually go back on his word, placing himself and members of the gang in danger to make sure Colm dies when he gets caught by the law and is sentenced to hang. Knowing that Colm has escaped the noose twice before, Dutch, Arthur and Sadie head into Saint Denis, a place they're heavily wanted, to ensure Colm keeps his date with a short drop. This, again, is a mistake. By making sure he dies, when he would have escaped if they didn't interfere, is detrimental to the gang. Having him escape would split the Pinkertons' attention and ease the pressure on the gang, but with him dead, the Pinkertons can completely focus on destroying the Vandaling gang. Dutch stops thinking about his actions, just acting on what on the surface would be good. Killing Cornwall, on the surface, is good for the gang, as he's been funding the Pinkertons since the train heist at the start of the game to bring Dutch to justice. However, how do you think the Pinkertons will react to someone killing one of their biggest donors? They're going to want to save face and bring those responsible accountable to justice, otherwise other donors will be worried they could be targeted and will stop donating to the agency. Basically, Dutch makes it so that the Pinkertons' only focus will be on his gang. Realizing this later in the game, he decides the best plan is to start a fight with a bigger enemy, the US Army. He manipulates young Native Americans to start a war with the government to create a distraction big enough to let the gang slip away in the confusion, a plan he seems to like as he repeats it in 1911. He does successfully start the war, but as one side is much more powerful than the other, it's over before it started, with most of them dying in the oil field fight, so not much of a distraction, leaving all the attention on the gang with nowhere to hide. Dutch clearly changes throughout the game, but when does he change? Is there a distinctive point in the story where Dutch becomes what he preached against? There are a few times you could point to. During the failed trolley station robbery, in order to escape, Dutch, Arthur and Lenny jump on one of the trolleys which blows off the track and Dutch hits his head. People point to this as when Dutch started to change, and yeah, it is after this when he becomes more violent and impulsive, but I don't think that's really what changed Dutch. I think it's part of the reason, but not the whole image. I don't think it would be a very good story if the thing that changed Dutch is a bump on the head, rather than his own mistakes mounting against him, slowly impacting him. Another time people point to is when Hosea dies. Dutch losing the angel in his shoulder, as Hosea is more level-headed and humble, and is someone Dutch listens to, is going to have an effect. This is more credible as it makes more sense for his character to change after losing someone close to him. Some even point to before the game starts, during the Blackwater ferry heist where he kills an innocent woman, but I don't think you can point to one singular moment to when Dutch changes. It's a slow, gradual process that you can't see until it's too late. Dutch changes throughout the story because of the pressure that society and he himself places on the group, and he slowly begins to crack. The real question is, when does Arthur begin to question Dutch and see that he's changed? Like most people, when I first played Chapter 5, I was disappointed. Having Arthur split from the rest of the gang, stranded in a strange place, was really exciting. We were going to see how Arthur will act when he doesn't have Dutch to lean on. We get this awesome shot as the game reveals where we are, and then we immediately find Dutch and the others. What was the point of having Arthur be left behind? On repeat playthroughs, I've come to see that this chapter is much more about Dutch than Arthur. Here is when Arthur begins to see who Dutch really is. This exact moment. He then lies to us about why he killed her. This is where the split between Arthur and Dutch starts. This is then exacerbated by Micah Bell, one of the more recent people to join the gang. Micah feeds Dutch's ego and arrogance, never questioning him and encouraging his more reckless acts. Dutch begins to see Micah as the only loyal person left in the gang, pushing Arthur and John aside as he whispers in Dutch's ear about disloyalty, sowing doubt amongst the gang and making himself Dutch's right-hand man.
I've been talking to Dutch. Feels to me like he's turned, challenging every move Dutch makes.
You think Dutch has lost his mind, Arthur? Well, Micah says you've been saying crazy things about him.
I love Peter Blomquist's performance. The way Micah twists his upper body, like he's trying to whisper in someone's ear, gives Micah a grimmer Wormtongue vibe. It's Micah that lets Dutch out of the more inconvenient parts of his moral code, like leaving Abigail behind when she's captured. That's because Dutch's real hope isn't for everyone to live free of the government, but for himself to live free, unquestioned by anyone and unbound by law. Interestingly, one character is able to see through Dutch's talk to see what he really is.
He wants to be an American king. With his knights.
I heard that.
Ooh.
I want no such thing.
You do?
I don't. I just want better than this for us.
Better? Your kind of better.
Oh, I can't stay mad at you, old man.
Okay.
But right now, I'd like to kill you.
Micah, unquestioning of Dutch, shows Dutch that people will follow him even when he acts more selfishly and recklessly, letting him drop his act and becoming more focused on people following his will without question. He's so sure of Micah's loyalty, even at his most paranoid, he refuses to believe that Micah is a rat. Even when Arthur flat out accuses him, it's only with Arthur's dying breath does some doubt enter his mind as he walks off, unsure of who to trust. It's only years later that Dutch decides who was telling the truth. There are other theories as to why Dutch shoots Micah, like he met with Micah for revenge and seeing his gang destroyed saw his chance, or believe that John would kill both of them and by shooting Micah was his best way of surviving. What I can wholeheartedly disagree with though is that this act somehow redeemed Dutch, because the next time we meet Dutch in the timeline is here. Wow, what a redeemed man. Dutch's power has always been his words. Through his speeches and conversations, it's enabled him to lead this group of misfits to believe what he believes. This is an act. He wants to seem like a great thinker who has these speeches come to him in the moment, but you can find notes around camp with parts of his speeches written down.
But we lost some folks. If I could throw myself in the ground in their stead, I'd do it, gladly.
He even has speeches ready for his final words, as we can see when he and Arthur are trapped on a cliff edge, and he repeats his speech that he gives at the end of the first game.
I got a plan. I got a plan, John. This is a good one. This is a good one. My whole life, I tried to fight change. We can't fight change. You can't fight nature, Captain. We can't always fight nature. You can't fight gravity. You can't fight gravity.
I've seen people say that this was Dutch remembering Arthur, and no, I don't believe that. He probably had speeches ready for the most likely way he would die. I imagine he had a speech ready for if he was shot and was slowly bleeding out, or if he had been caught by the law and was about to be hanged. The one time Dutch wasn't prepared was during the final confrontation as John.
Say something! I ain't got too much to say no more.
All those speeches and plans, but in the end, he had nothing. A sad man that grew insane and forgot everything he once fought for. Red Dead 2 walks a tightrope between tedium and fun. It's a strange thing to say that the boring parts of the game is what makes the game fun and enjoyable. Not because it's fun to do, but because it's what the fun parts are built on. All of the realism is here for immersion. The game wants you to spend your time in the world as a part of it. Just like everyone else, you need to eat and drink. This is then used to create real characters, helped by the incredible performance and writing of those characters. But before the game gets too boring, the story will pick up and have an intense shootout or a fun set piece, or you'll run into an NPC on the road wanting help or to harm you. Whenever this game gets close to getting too boring, something will happen to bring you back. It creates a game that you can't put down, as the fun parts stay fun as you've just finished with a boring bit to compare it to. It's why you can sink countless hours into Red Dead 2, this ebb and flow that creates immersion. The only thing that broke my immersion was when the game punished me for slightly straying from the chosen path, or when it ignored me. That was when I was most ready to put the controller down, when I had to repeat most of the mission because I climbed a bloody ladder. The story isn't going to challenge you or your view of the world like other games, but it does fall back on one of the basic beliefs that most people will have, that being good is the correct choice in life. This is why Arthur's journey is so captivating, not just seeing him become a good man, but being the reason he changes as you help his family and friends. This want to see Arthur become better makes sticking to a dishonourable playthrough difficult as the game goes on. I want Arthur to succeed in his goal to make sure people will be okay after he's gone, even if that means he doesn't get a fairy tale ending. The success of this story, and the game overall, leads to the natural question, will there be a sequel? Yes, I have no doubt eventually we'll get a Red Dead Redemption 3, but what will it be about? The most obvious is that it will follow suit of this game and be a prequel, set in the early days of the Van der Linde gang, playing as either a young Arthur or Hosea, with the game finishing at the Blackwater heist. There's also the possibility of following some of the side characters whose fates are unknown, such as Charles or Sadie, or maybe it's time to move away from the Van der Linde gang, explore a new group of cowboys with their own issues. What I also know is we won't see a sequel for a long time. With GTA 6 being released at some point in human history, any work on Red Dead 3 probably isn't a priority at Rockstar at the moment. All I know is that when I put the controller down for the last time, I was happy in the knowledge that John was finally safe. Thank you for getting this far. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe. If this video does well, I'll definitely continue making video essays like this. I've been thinking about doing an Alien Isolation or Callisto Protocol video for hopefully an October release.
Lumbago.